All right, we are live. Welcome to another episode of 10 Horse Money YouTube channel, Monday Night Live. No JB tonight. He had something to do with his son, some sort of practice. I'm not sure what sport it was, but plus we got some snow around here and it's actually kind of slick out there. We were driving around, we went to eat at Wings, etc. Probably like an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago, and it was starting to get slick. I pulled out of Murphy's. Yeah, I was kind of fishtailing and stuff in the parking lot. I saw the high school kid in the Walmart parking lot doing donuts like an idiot.
That was me about 45 years ago.
I know.
If I'm being honest.
I had like 3 or 4 people send me there's a mail truck video where there's this guy in this cul-de-sac just burning donuts in the snow. And
a mail truck?
Yeah, it's a mail truck. I had a couple people send me that video and saying they caught me out there doing donuts in the cul-de-sac. Actually, I used to do that in the Jeep. When I first started, we had the little Jeeps, and they were super small, and you could just do a 180 curb to curb and park. It was pretty sweet. Just swing it around, yeah, and slide right in against the curb and put her in park and get out and start delivering.
There you go.
Yeah, the new trucks are a little bit bigger. They're still pretty small, but they're not quite as agile as the old Jeeps, those little Army Jeeps. Those things are crazy too, man.
Our roads they're fine over here, but they'll probably refreeze a little bit tonight. But like we were saying before we jumped on here, I'm waiting for that main road in front of the power plant to clear up so I can go get some gas in the boat. I'm ready to go fishing.
Yeah, it's probably been 3 or 4 days for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, I've fished, let's see, 2 days before it got really cold. Was that Thursday that front came through?
Yeah, I think so.
So then that means I fished Tuesday. And the rig that I caught those 4 fish on is now a 4-arm A-rig instead of a 5-arm A-rig. I actually had a triple on that on Tuesday, and then one of them pulled off and broke the arm, and so I ended up with the doubles. So I decided I'd retire it.
Yeah.
So that one's going to hang in the garage.
You got your money's worth out of that one for sure.
I did. I had some fun with that one. But that's why you never you're ever in a fish off with an A-rig, don't ever use a used one.
Yeah.
Those arms will break.
Hammy said he's cracked open a fresh can of Viennas. He's ready for some R&D and crew.
Oh, don't be in my stash, dude.
How's everyone's Christmas at home? You get any good swim baits, glide baits? I got a couple of Baitworks gift cards.
I didn't get any fishing stuff. I specifically asked the kids not to buy me anything. What I asked for from the grandkids was I wanted refrigerator art. And I've got a grandson that's 7, a granddaughter that's 5, another one that's 11. And I said, I want some stuff from my grandkids I can put on my refrigerator. So they made me a bunch of refrigerator art. And I told my dad and stepmom not to buy me anything, but my dad couldn't help it. He bought me a case of shotgun shells. So I've been duck hunting a little bit.
That's good.
Yeah. So, but I had a Christmas. I didn't want to, with these grandkids, I didn't want to buy them something to feed the insanity of always being on a computer, kids need to be playing outside or doing something other than staring at a computer all the time. So I was like, what do I buy him? And my grandson's birthday had just come around. I bought him all sorts of sports stuff. So I went to the music store, and it's, sometimes it's better to do and then ask for forgiveness later. So I bought a piano.
Dang.
And I bought a piano, and I texted my daughter and my son-in-law. I said, hey, I did something for Christmas. I need 4 feet of wall space. And that's all I sent them. And they're like, what? You know, and make a really long story short, I had seen my daughter's work Christmas party my grandson and granddaughter were at, and there was a piano there, and they were banging on the piano. I was like, all right, there's my clue. So I bought a piano for Christmas and I had it delivered.
Nice, man. That's a great gift.
Yeah, they're gonna be cussing me probably forever now.
Yeah, it's one of those things where as long as you got somebody to move it in and move it out, it's okay. Because those suckers are heavy.
Yeah. So
hey,
hopefully
Ron,
one of the kids takes to it. Yeah.
You got some crackling in your audio. See if you can close out of the link and click back in, and we'll see if that fixes it.
Okay. All right,
cool. Andy asks, is anybody going to the Collinsville Let's Go Fishing Show? Yes, I'm going to go there. I got Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. I'm going to see if JB wants to go and make that trek up there. So I've never been. I'm looking forward to it. I want to go out there and mingle with everybody. I know Crockett Gator's going to be up there. I want to meet Joey, and they're actually going to be on here next week. So Joey, who is the owner of Crockett Gator, and Connor Cunningham, BFL All-American winner, and then Jason Husky, who owns a soft plastics manufacturing company that's been working with Crockett Gator. They're going to come on here on the live stream next week. So I'm looking forward to that. And that Collinsville deal, they're going to talk about that, and they're going to talk about some other really cool stuff. Looking forward to that. You ever go to that Collinsville sports show, Ron?
It's been a long time. Is that audio any better? Or?
Sounds 100% better.
Okay. I had to do that last time too. I don't know why.
Yeah, it was crackling. I was kind of waiting to see if it would go away, but it sounds good. Thanks, BS Fishing. Appreciate that.
I should have fiber optics out here pretty soon. They're running it out to the lake, so that'll solve my internet issues. But
probably something.
But, you know, I think that Collinsville show, is that the one where I saw Brandon Polinick's going to be at?
I believe so. Guys at home, is that true? I think so. I'm pretty sure.
I know he's at one of the shows around here, Brandon Polinick. He's going to have 2 or 3 seminars I saw in the schedule. That would be good to listen to. Hottest anglers on the planet.
Oh man, yeah, that dude's phenomenal. One of the best YouTube channels out there too.
Yeah.
His videographer and editor does an amazing job.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing job. I mean, I bet one of those videos that he does, I bet it takes, I'm trying to think of what, my videos probably take 6 to 8 hours, of actually, when I get home with my cameras and uploading all the footage to the end product, probably 6 to 8 hours, maybe closer to 8 hours. And that's not counting, the actual fishing time and all that. So his stuff's got to take at least 100 hours, maybe more. Because I mean, he's dealing with 4K, maybe 5.3K, which the upload speeds on that are a lot slower. And there's so much B-roll. I mean, it's like just clip after clip of B-roll, just all the overlays with the music and the audio and the different angles and the different shots, the slow-mo stuff, the zoom in stuff, the music, the fade in, the fade outs. I wouldn't be afraid to say 150 hours per video. I mean, it's amazing. So you got to have somebody, you got to have a crew to do that. You can't fish and do that. You got to have hired hands.
Yeah, he and like Scott Martin, they're paying those guys full time, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. And I think I heard Hallman talking the other day. I think he was on BTL. He was talking about having Scott's videographer go travel with him next year on the Elite Series. So he's going to try to up his game a little bit. He doesn't want all the artsy fartsy stuff. He wants to keep it real organic and kind of raw. He's not going to have a lot of B-roll like drones and things like that, but he does want somebody to be out there to capture all that little stuff like the takeoff and the weigh in and all the stuff that you can't really do because you're trying to focus on actually fishing a bass tournament.
I see.
That's the nice thing about having somebody that would come out and do that stuff for you, is you can just do your thing. You just get mic'd up and you just be you, and you just do your thing, and somebody else takes care of all that other stuff. You just talk about what's going on while you're doing it, and everybody else hits record and stop. You go catch fish. That's all you got to do. That's right. Hallman was on a Hellabass last week. I think that's where he was talking about that.
Yeah, I watched part of that. I didn't see the whole thing, but I saw part of that. I like Hallman.
Hallman's a good dude, man. I didn't really know him. I mean, you hear people on BTL and you meet them in person. You know, one of the cool things about this stream is you actually get to meet these people like on the stream, but you actually get to talk to them backstage before you come on the stream. And then usually after the stream is over, we'll stay backstage and talk for a little bit longer afterwards. And you get a really good feel of how somebody is. And he's a stand-up dude. And he's a straight up dude. What you see is what you get.
Yeah, he comes across very genuine. I think that's exactly who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Andy says, what crappie rod did you get, Gabe? I got a B&M.
There you go.
Ron, I got to fish with Ron at Crab Orchard, and that video is going to come out pretty soon. We caught so many dang fish. That's a problem with this jerkbait video that I've been working on today, Ron. Ron and I went out and caught some jerkbait fish, and there's a lot of fish catches in it. It's cool to have too many fish catches than not enough, but you get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm going to have to like cut a few of them out, or which ones are the best ones. But we caught a ton of crappie, and he was fishing with your Roger B&M, right?
Most of them, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The one I was fishing with, I think was, and so I got a $50 gift card from Amazon, and sweet. I was kind of snooping around on the Amazon website, and I texted Ron. I'm like, what kind of rod do you recommend? And he told me, and sure enough, I got one, and it was $50 exactly. It's a 9-footer.
Yep.
That was a really good length. It was light, but yeah, you can still get out away from the boat far enough, I feel. When I fished with Matt from 3 Pound Fishing, he has I either fished with a 12 or maybe even a 14-footer, and it's kind of tip heavy once it gets way, way out there. And I just like that 9-footer. I felt like I could kind of pitch it a little bit better, and I felt like I could maybe even cast it if I needed to, but it was still.
You can.
Okay. It was still out in front of the boat enough to feel like I was away from the fish.
Sometimes those silly crappie want that thing kind of pendulum through them.
Mm-hmm.
And that 9-footer you can handle, and you can kind of adjust on the fly with that 9-footer. And for an amateur crappie fisherman such as myself, who I'm just out there to put some fish in the freezer and have a good time, that's really all I need. You know, the more advanced you get into the crappie fishing, I'm sure it's just like bass fishing, and all those different rods, I'm sure, have a place. But for going out to Crab Orchard and soaking a jig underneath the boat, you don't need anything else.
Yeah, those crappie come right to the boat, it seems like. And we've talked about this before, but they seem like they have no problem being right under the boat. It's amazing. Even that last little pile that we hit we were in like 6 foot of water maybe. And we were
in 10 foot, that brush pile's in 10 foot of water, but that brush, they're just Christmas trees, and they top out at like 6 foot, and we were right on top of the fish.
Yeah.
Right.
Had no problem being there.
No.
Hey, Brown Bait Company, where are you located at? You're talking about throwing a 8-inch trash fish and an 8-inch weedless shed in the water, I guess, or in the winter. He says at least 8 hours of editing. Yeah, it's way more than 8 hours of editing. I can promise you that. It's more like 100 hours of editing. It has to be, or 40. I don't know what it is, but it's quite a bit. We're talking about Polinick again. Somebody did say that Polinick was going to be there at the show. BP Fishing, I believe, is Polinick's channel. You just type in Brandon Polinick on YouTube and it'll come up. Just really good job. Amazing stuff. Brown bait, Georgia. Okay, cool. A little bit warmer water. I don't throw those big baits around here. And the reason why is I should more. Now that I've got some forward-facing sonar, I can kind of pinpoint those fish, but I've done it a little bit, but I just don't have the commitment, Brown, to be honest with you. I just don't have the commitment to throw a bait all day for one bite. Now, a lot of times I throw a bait all day for one bite, but it's not like a big glide bait.
But not by choice.
Yeah, it's not by choice.
Yeah. We've all been there. Been out there all day and not had any bites.
Yeah. So any idea what the water temps are over there in Egypt? You got a guess?
I haven't been on the water since the Tuesday before the giant cold front that enveloped the entire nation. But it was 52-ish up front, and it had cooled off. We actually had a south wind, so Egypt is weird that way. So it was keeping the warm water penned up front, and it was 49 by the front island. I'm guessing, I don't know, my plan is to go Wednesday. My guessing is 50-ish up by the buoy line up front by the power plant. And you get down the lake, and I'd say we're probably going to be like 47-ish. And then the back end of the lake, I'm guessing, is going to be low 40s. I bet you we're in low 40s to around 40 in a lot of the area lakes. We'll see on Wednesday.
Yep. You said you said Devil's Kitchen was 39, right? You saw the.
Yeah, there's for any of the local guys here, windy.com is the weather service that I use. Just windy.com. And anyway, long story short, if you put Marion in as your home base, it'll pop up several temperature reporting stations. And of that, they use Devil's Kitchen Lake as a water temperature guide. And I don't know if the refuge should put that in, or I'm not sure what, but Devil's Kitchen Lake, I believe it's measured at the dam, was 39 today. So it's a little quick local tip to check water temperature. I don't know if the Army Corps, it looks like Scotty was out fishing 43 in Shawnee. That sounds about right.
Yeah. Stillwater says that Cedar was 45 a couple days before the front.
Before the front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet Pomona's froze up, or pretty close. You know, since it sits back in that pocket and it's out of the north and south wind.
Yeah.
For the most part.
I talked to Rodney today on text. He lives back in Dry Fork, and he said there was ice around his docks, but other than that, it was open.
Okay.
So it sounds like we got some skim ice, but I think we dodged a bullet because it's going to start warming up. It's going to be above freezing tomorrow and 50 on Wednesday, knock on wood. So.
Yeah, and even the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all that's like 50s.
All warm. Yeah. Lows in the 40s too, which is good for this time of year.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I'll definitely be out there. So let's dive into. Amy says little lakes were open today. Let's dive into some winter stuff, man. Some of the stuff that really works in the wintertime, you know, a lot of stuff goes away. There's a lot of baits that just kind of, especially once that water gets like 43, a lot of that stuff starts going away. Your spinner bait kind of starts going away. Certainly your top waters, all that. Most of your flipping up shallow goes away. I mean, there's days when it will work. If you get a really nice sunny day, or like 3 or 4 sunshiny days, you can still catch them up there really, really shallow. But you tend to start getting into the traditional type cold water baits. And you were talking about an A-rig a while ago. You broke that arm off the A-rig.
Yeah.
That's something that,
suspect number one right there.
That's an amazing the old forum. Somebody sent me some A-rigs that we need to try out. They're made by Seller Baits. They look like they're made really, really good. He's got a couple different models of them. This one is the 5x5. He also has a 5x4, which is the kayak rig. So it's a little bit shorter. This one right here. It's kind of hard to tell with this camera, but they're made. Looks like those
really
good.
It looks like those blades are a little bigger than the flash mob.
I think, yeah, they are. I was checking them out a couple days ago when I got these. It's made really, really good. It's a little bit heavier duty than the flash mob.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit bigger blades. 5-inch arm on this one. Then he has the kayak rig is a shorter one, which I think it's a 4-inch arm, 5x4. But this one's really compact. This would be excellent for going around docks and laydowns and stuff. So there's quite a bit of difference in the two. This is the kayak.
Oh,
one.
wow.
But yeah, it's a lot shorter, compact, but still got the 5 arms on it. And this has, see, it's still got 1, 2, 3, 4 blades. 4 blades, 5 blades. This one has 5 blades. This one has 4.
They don't have a blade on the center one?
Not on the kayak one.
Okay.
Kayak one's a little bit more finessey. And it's got smaller blades too, I think. Yeah, it does. The kayak one has, so here's the regular one, and then here's the kayak. It's a just the neck size down on the blade. I know it's hard to see on this camera.
The bigger blades, if you're fishing shallower, those bigger blades help keep that. It's amazing how much 5 blades, when you have 5 blades, the size of the blade, how much difference that makes in lift. So that's, if you're fishing shallower, those bigger blades really help with that. If you're wanting to get the bait deeper, then with those big blades, you're going to have to go to a little bit heavier jig head. Just depends on what you're looking to do. So one reason the Flash Mob Junior for me is it's a good all around. The quality on it's really not that great, but it suffices. But the small blades make it really versatile, and I can fish at a lot of different depths without having to really overwork the reel. Working that thing slow is important, it seems like, a lot of times.
I think that's probably, if there's one thing that gets overlooked the most on a rig, well, I don't want to say one thing, but one really key thing with fishing a rig is what you just said: slower the better. Yeah, and I've seen that a lot this year. Really the last couple of years, I started focusing on it a lot more, and you can see it with the forward-facing sonar a lot, how slow your rig is moving along the bottom. And a lot of times you won't even see the fish on the bottom. They'll just kind of blend in, and you're reeling that thing just super, super slow, just crawling it. And one will come up and kind of just suck it in. And I really think that if you were reeling it a little bit faster, he was just going to let it go. But I think it's just right in his face for a second or two. And it's just too much for him. If you're moving a little bit faster, he's just going to let it go by sometimes. Not always, but sometimes I think they will, especially if they've been getting a lot of pressure. If somebody's reeling it in at 1 mile an hour and you're able to reel it in at a half a mile an hour, you may get that bite. You're giving that fish a little bit longer to look at that thing. Yep.
Yeah. And I've never felt like by reeling it slow, I was missing bites. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I've never felt like, oh, I need to speed this up or whatever. But the other thing on the A-rig too, that I think, it depends too. If you're fishing deep water, or you're throwing big jig heads, you're trying to throw a bigger swim bait, you're going to need a bigger hook. But the one thing I would recommend is to use as small a hook as you think you can get away with, depending on what you're doing. These little hooks here, that's just a little number 2 on these 3.5-inch Kitex. Lets the tail move a little bit more freely. And those little hooks, they peg the fish. I mean, they really, really, really peg the fish. If I was using a bigger swim bait, I would have to go to a bigger hook, obviously, but I would recommend using as small a hook as you can on that. It's been my experience.
Yes, somebody asked where Seller Baits is located. It's a Missouri company. I'm trying to find exactly where they're at.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that one before. I'm curious.
Yeah, it's a small company. They just make a few products. Yeah, it's in Missouri, but I think you can probably I think they have a Facebook site. You can go check them out on Facebook. It's well made though. It's really good stuff.
Cool.
Yep.
We'll have a chance to use it here for a couple of months. That's for sure. It's
no doubt, man.
It's definitely wintertime.
Tennessee Bassmaster, welcome. Go down here and check some of these comments real quick. Yeah, Stillwaters, that kayak rig is quite a bit more finessey. I know the kayakers typically have a bunch of rods behind them sitting vertically, and I have to imagine you really got to focus on that back cast. So
they hook everything.
Yeah, a couple inches of shorter rig could make all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
The best umbrella rig, somebody said Hog Farmer up there. Hog Farmer makes a really good umbrella rig. I've heard Picasso makes a decent one. And I haven't fished a whole lot of them. I fished some of the titanium ones, the Strike King titanium that's got the kind of the X-wing. I don't like that. It seems to catch a lot more wind. It's cool because it flexes. You can really hit it with that rod tip and make it kind of swell and flare out. I like that aspect of it. But it seemed to catch a lot of wind when I fished them versus something that has the wires that are kind of at an angle. The Flash Mob Juniors, it's a decent rig, like Ron was saying. You're gonna go through some. I think if you're fishing a lake that's got big fish, if we're hooking 5, 6, 7 pounders or smallmouth, if you're fishing Pickwick and places where you're gonna run into like some 4 and 5 pound smallmouth, you're probably gonna have to go with something better than a Flash Mob. It's gonna tear up on you. But for just
I've thrown the Picasso quite a bit. It's a solid A rig. It's a little higher quality than the Flash Mob. And the eye of the Picasso spins. It's not fixed, which helps a little bit, especially if you're having to just throw a couple hooks. You know what I mean? That tends to create some line twists sometimes, but the Picasso one's a solid one. I haven't thrown there's so many of them out there now but the Picasso the nice thing about the Picasso too, they offer that in some different blade colors. Sometimes the blade color, just like a spinnerbait, can make a difference if you got a little dingy water or whatever. Who knows? But
yeah, and like the Hog Farmer, well, Picasso the same way. They have a lot of different configurations. They have like a 7 wire, they have a 5 wire, they've got stuff that seems like it has double blades on each wire. Just a lot of different options. They're pricey. I mean, some of those rigs are $30 just for the rig, and you start throwing some swim bait heads on there and your swim baits. I mean, you're talking, it's a $50 bait that you're throwing out there. So it's kind of important to know where you're throwing. And Tennessee Bassmaster says, what are some tips for not snagging every cast? I mean, so
depends
if you do
what you're doing.
Yeah. Me personally, I think it's you got to be in tune with your bait, not just an A-rig, any bait. You got to know where the bottom is. Sometimes it's a good idea to get out in an open area and try to figure out how fast your rig is falling, so you have an idea how close you are to the bottom.
You need to know, because depending on what you're fishing and what cover you're fishing, you need to know how fast that thing falls, per second. So what I would recommend is go on an area of the lake where you're not, where it's flat bottom, or you're not going to get hung up, and count it down till it hits let's say you got a spot that is 10 feet deep, and it's 10 feet, and you're not going to get hung up. Throw it out there and count it down, because depending on how you got it rigged and what line size you're using, so on and so forth, they're all going to be different. And you got to know how far that thing falls you know, so you can count it down. So then if you're fishing over cover, if you're fishing in an area where you think you might get hung up, then you can count it down to the right depth, and then you're still going to get hung up some. That's just part of it, but you can avoid a lot of that. If you've got forward facing sonar, then that solves all that anyway. But
right. And what's your thoughts on braid versus fluorocarbon on an A-rig?
If I was fishing heavy cover and I was fishing deeper, I would succumb to using braid just so that I could straighten my hooks out and get my bait back. But I'm convinced that you will catch more fish on fluorocarbon. It's just been my experience. It doesn't make any sense. You got 5 wires hanging down there. You wouldn't think the line is going to make any difference. But for me, I catch more fish on fluorocarbon. That's just, it's my dad told me a long time ago, don't argue with the fish. And I get more bites on fluorocarbon, so that's what I throw. Now, where I fish here, we're not throwing it in a lot of stuff. So I don't get hung up that much. And when I do, every once in a while you lose one. But a lure getter, we'll get them out fairly often, believe it or not.
Yeah, in Tennessee Bassmaster, another thing is fishing with lighter heads. If you're
as light as head as you can get away with. Yeah.
It allows you to control your bait a little bit. You got more room for error. If you're fishing with even a 1/4 ounce head,
that's a 16th right there.
16th. Yeah. I learned that from you, Ron. I always fish 1/8, and sometimes, I still fish 1/8 occasionally, but 16th is, if you touch bottom, you can just kind of speed it up just a little bit, and it's so light that it comes up a lot faster, and then you can keep it where it needs
really
to be.
Slow still.
Where your heavier heads, they're always going to try to dig in, and you can only go so slow, and you're going to be getting hung up all the time. So you can kind of float. You can float those 16th ounce heads. You can just kind of glide them down there, and you can fish them 30 foot deep. It's no problem. You just got to cast out, and once you get it out there, and once it gets down, just reel it real super slow. And that's kind of what you want to do. If you've got something that's really heavy, you're going to be getting hung up a lot more. Now, if you're fishing in current or something, you're going to have something a little bit heavier. Maybe if it's super windy, you might have to have something a little bit heavier. But for most conditions on just a reservoir, you can get a 16th ounce head works great, in my opinion. And then if you need to bump up to like an 1/8, that's fine too, but you're going to get hung up a little bit more. So if you are getting hung up a lot, I'd say go to 16th ounce weights and throw like a 3.3 to 3.5, something like that. I like the regular K-Tex, not the fat work great too, but it seems like I get a lot more bites and on the just the slim, the traditional K-Tech. So, but that head, that lighter head, I think is key on not getting hung up as much.
Yep. 100%.
Darius says we need to try to storm Largo shad on his A-rig. Yeah, there's so many good baits out there. I've got some. Yeah, I bought some a while back. I've got some of the Yum Scottsboro swim baits too that I need to try. I just need to try them. It's hard to try different stuff when what you're throwing seems to be working, but there's days when maybe that won't work and you do need to try something different. Let's see here. So any other tips on the A-rig? Rod?
No, not really.
Reel, things like that?
The rod, did you say?
Yeah.
I throw a 7.7, and the 7.7 doesn't have to be exact, but I like, you need a little bit longer rod because you're lobbing that thing out there. And then don't use a pool cue. You got to have some tip to throw that bait. And then also, when they eat the A-rig, a lot of times you're kind of feeding it to them. You're not really setting the hook, and you'll feel them bump, 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 all of a sudden, and then there they are. Then it loads up. And you just kind of just keep reeling. You don't really set the hook. And I've gotten really bad about it. If I find a nice school of fish on my depth finder, I get spoiled, and I don't want to just catch one. I want to catch 2 or 3 at a time. So I'll get one on, and then I just keep going, I'll slow it down even more. Let them swim around with it a little bit down there, and you'd be amazed how many times you can catch 2 or 3 on purpose. I mean, I'm not lying. If you're in the right bunch of fish. But the moral of the story is, though, you don't really set the hook, so you don't need a stiff rod, and just use as light a combo as you can, line, rod, all that. And then the reel, I have went to a 5-to-1 reel because I'm not trying to speed reel that thing, and so it's like dredging a big crankbait with a low gear ratio reel. It's the same thing. And so I've got one of those wide spool 5-to-1 reels that I use for my A-rig, and that just, I don't feel like I'm working very hard when I'm reeling it in. It just makes it easier by the end of the day. So
yeah, I think I've been throwing it on a 7'6". It's just a loose custom. It's it's a crankbait rod, I think. So something that's got a little bit softer tip that you can allow them to load up, and yeah, you nailed it with letting them eat it. You can just keep reeling. Really, most of the time you can just keep.
You don't have to do anything. It really is. If there's anyone out there that hasn't thrown it much but is wanting to this winter a little bit, I guess the biggest thing, don't overthink it. Just tie one on and throw it out there and reel it slow. I mean, and when you get around them, they're going to eat it, and just keep reeling when they eat it. It's literally that simple. It's more important spending the time graphing to find them than it is. That's the harder part. But once you find them, the other thing you can do with that A-rig too, I mean, yeah, you can graph and find them in the schools and stuff, but there's times you can go down the bank and throw the A-rig like a spinnerbait. When that a lot of times when that water temperature is in the upper 40s to mid 50s, when there's still a lot of fish up on the bank, and there's always some fish on the bank anyway, you can just go down the bank and just throw that thing like a spinnerbait and catch them.
Yep. And that's one of the advantages of having like a lighter rig. It's not going to wear you out. You can be pretty dang accurate with those. I was fishing an A-rig. It's like 3 or 4 weeks ago, Lake of the Ozarks, when I fished that Anglers in Action tournament with Mike, and I was throwing it around those docks. You could pitch it. You pitch it around the docks and stuff.
Oh, it's a great bait for the docks.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's just like throwing a spinnerbait around the docks. Baitworks had the 12 days of Fishman's sale going on, and they had a heck of a deal on A-rigs. They had buy 2, get 2 free, I believe. I don't know if that's still going on. What's that?
I saw that. I was tempted, but I was like, I don't need any fishing tackle.
It might still be going on. I'm not sure. Go check it out. I don't think I have a discount code down here, THM10, to get you 10% off your order. I don't think it works on the Fishmas deals, but any other stuff that you're looking for on Baitworks, use that code. It's a great way to support the channel. If you've already used, I think it's a one-time code. If you've already used that code, there is a link in the description box. Use that code. That way it lets them know that you got there from this stream. It's just a way to support the channel, man. Just let them know what's up. Appreciate it if anybody uses that code. DJ, what's up, brother? Good to see you on here. Let's see here. Parabolic, yeah, a lighter glide bait rod, I would say. Brown bait, yeah, no, that's what he uses. Yeah, you can use just about like anything 7.4 to 7.6, 7.8, something like that. It's not too specialized, really.
No, don't make it. If you're just starting out doing it and you're looking for something, just use something you already have until you figure it out a little bit. Don't overthink it.
I'll throw it up, Josh. I'll throw that A-rig shallow, 4 feet. You know, just like Ron was saying, going down the bank sometimes. And if you got if you've got some wind blowing in on a side of a point or a channel swing bank or anything that just an area that holds fish, typically you can just get 30 feet from the bank and just go down that bank and just make some short casts and just slow roll it, just like a spinnerbait. They'll knock the crap out of it when it's right.
Yeah, this time of year, you know how those 45-degree banks get, this time of year off and on. You get one of those main lake banks that's got some wind on it. Maybe it's a channel swing bank. I've thrown them right on the bank before, and just you reel it out, and just like throwing a spinnerbait, and they'll eat it.
Yeah, you don't really need a high-end rod. I will say one thing, you want a rod that's not real tip heavy because it can be taxing. So you want a somewhat of a light rod, something that's light and feels good in your hand. It's not going to wear you out because if you throw that thing around for 3 or 4 hours, you're going to feel it. If you're throwing a real stiff tip heavy rod, you're going to be fighting that tip all day long. And there is something to be said about, it doesn't have to be a super sensitive rod, but it needs to be lightweight, somewhat of a lightweight rod. Here's a question for you, Ron. We'll kind of transfer over to something else. RD, when using the flutter spoons, have you ever messed twitching them like a jerkbait over the fish? It gives the spoon like a twitching / gliding action.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of, I love throwing a spoon. And we just dropped that spoon video, but yeah, there's this, it's just like every lure. There's, your imagination is kind of, you can fish that thing a lot of different ways. I got in a deal last year. I probably shouldn't say this. My partner will yell at me, but last year at Lake of Egypt, we got a couple main marinas, and they have tournaments, when these fish collect under these docks. Well, in the fall, all these fish that sit under these docks at the marinas, in the fall, when they pull the pontoon boats off of these docks, all those fish scatter, and then they don't really go very far, but they scatter, and their roof over their head has been disturbed that they've had all summer. And I got in a deal where these fish were shallow. I mean, they were 5 to 6 feet of water. And I was coming in from fishing just normally, and I came in and I found these fish, and it's like, oh, hell, I got a spoon tied. I'm just going to throw that at them. And I throw that out there and let it sink about a foot or whatever. And then I do my reel stop thing. It's just bloop, and then flutter down, bloop, flutter down. And I smoked those fish for about 2 weeks, and then until they finally got tired of me. So yeah, you can. It's just that you're that spoon, that flutter spoon. When you reel it and stop it, you're imitating a dying shad. That's what you're imitating. So anytime you think mimicking a dying shad will help you catch a fish, as long as it's not too cover oriented, that flutter spoon will catch them.
Yeah, it's an amazing bait. If you haven't seen the video that Ron and I did, it's a really good video. Ron really breaks down that flutter spoon technique. He shares a lot. I mean, he puts it all out there, shares probably more than he should have, but he just wanted to be, keep it real and share everything with you guys. But it's a really good video. It's got a lot of views because it's very in depth, and that's a deadly technique this time of year. I think it starts getting real good in the fall, like September. It starts getting good sooner than most people realize that it starts getting good.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for it, you can have those fish to yourself for quite a while. But it's and it it works it works anytime you see the right stuff.
It could be July if you see the right stuff.
Right. I've done it in June.
Yeah. If you're on if you're Kentucky Lake or Pickwick or Gunnersville and you're out on the ledges, it's exactly what a lot of those guys do. Down there, a lot of times they're throwing bigger spoons it's a great bait.
Yeah, bait. another bait, like I said, go check that video out if you haven't. We really break down everything, the rod and the line and the techniques and all that. But another bait it's certainly not exactly like a flirt spoon, but it kind of works in the same applications as this little blade bait. This is a Demiki Vault, and this little sucker right here, you know, the Gay Blade, the Stealth Shad, Silver Buddy, those are all the same type of baits, but this one's made by Demiki. This is one that I started throwing a couple years ago, just from some people on the channel had recommended this, and I started experimenting with it. But it's something that works on those same type of fish. And interesting story, I was fishing a tournament. It was a winter tournament on Cedar with my buddy Jerry, and we were throwing a jerkbait in an area where I'd been getting bit on jerkbaits, and it just wasn't happening. You know, we weren't getting bit. And he he tied one of these things on, and we're fishing grass. We're fishing that outside deeper grass that's in like 6 foot of water, maybe 8. And he was throwing this up in that 6 foot zone in the grass and basically making 1 or 2 pulls before it was out of the grass. And we're talking 37-degree water, I think. Wow. There's a video. I've got a video. I can't remember exactly, but it was cold water. And he started smashing them on this thing. They wouldn't hit that jerk bait. They just didn't want to come up off the bottom. They didn't want to rise. But putting this little blade bait in their face, they would catch it. And somebody was talking about throwing an A-rig really, really shallow. You can throw this blade bait really shallow too and catch them. And it's surprisingly snag resistant. I mean, it's not good in wood, but most other things, it kind of pops out of rocks fairly well. It comes out of grass fairly well. I mean, it'll bog down in if you throw right up in a big grass clump, but that sparse grass that's on the outside, you know, the grass that's kind of tapering out and thinning out, it'll rip through that stuff pretty good. So this is another bait that is really good in the wintertime. I know it's real popular up north. A lot of guys throw it up north, and it's something that I've just been playing around with the last couple of years. I've been throwing it on 12-pound test. I was starting to throw it on when I started. I was throwing it on 15-pound test, and I believe it was Josh, kayak angler from this area. Had a lot of experience with the Demiki or with the blade bait, and he said, "Man, you should try it on 12." And I put it on 12-pound test, and it made a big difference. You get a lot more vibration out of it. You can really feel what the bait is doing. 3/8 ounce or 1/2 ounce is the 2 sizes that I've been throwing. I just kind of kept it simple, like a chrome. And then there was a gold color that they make that I've had some success with. And this Falcon Cara that I got from Ron a while back, 7 foot medium heavy, is perfect for that blade bait. It's got a really soft tip. And I think that's another, you know, all these baits that are reaction type baits, I think there's something with that soft tip. Gives the fish a chance to like suck it in, to load up on it, and you don't pull it away from them. It's more forgiving. And then you got your treble hooks too, with your spoon and with the blade bait. You need some soft tip for those treble hooks. You don't want to pull them out. The fish in the wintertime, their mouths are really hard. So sometimes you don't get that hook in there really good. So anything you can have in your arsenal that helps you get those fish in, you know, is in your best interest. And a soft rod a lot of times is key for that kind of technique. You've had some experience with blade bait, Ron, right?
Yeah, throwing it, not a lot, something I need to throw more. Another bait that I'll throw, maybe more so than a blade bait, not because I should throw a blade bait more than I do. My problem, I'm always stuck throwing that spoon. I just like throwing a spoon. But a tail spinner was also a good winter bait. You know, the old Little George, or there's several out there. The old tail spinner is a good winter bait when they're out in the bait fish, and it's something you can throw a country mile, and yeah, you don't want to throw it on real heavy line, 10 or 12 pound test. We've caught some fish on just the old tail spinner. Sometimes we throw in an underspin, and like the underspin will You know how it is. You'll throw in a bait and then they quit biting it for whatever reason. Who knows why? Fish are weird. So you pick up something else, and we've been able to trigger them again on the tail spinner for whatever reason. It's a good bait.
Man, that's key right there. What you just said is changing baits.
Yeah.
You see that a lot, even on those big schools. If you got a big school, it's crazy how they'll get off of one bait and then you pick up something else, and it's like they never seen a bait. They haven't seen a bait all day. It's weird. It's weird how they start and stop. I mean, there's no there's no explaining it really. But yeah, picking up a different bait will definitely fire those fish up, and that's just as important in the winter as it is any time of the year. So tail spinner, blade bait, spoon, A-rig, you can kind of throw all of those at the same fish. One bait that we have to, my dad would kill me if I didn't bring it up, is don't forget about the old black or black and blue jig in the wintertime. And actually, you don't even need any of that blue in there. In winter, black is all you need, I swear to God. And take that damn plastic off the back of that hook and put yourself a piece of pork rind on the back of that. I brought these in just to remind us to talk about this, because you showed me the power of this sucker the last couple of years fishing with you. And I went out and bought some. This is something that was out of production for a long time, but they started producing it again.
They brought it back.
Yeah, and I know you're a big believer in it. And I had some success on it.
Cold water.
They hold on to it. Yeah.
Yeah, they hold on to it. You can put your scent on there. I put the scent in the jar, and in the cold water, that pork is well, it used to be all we had. I mean, we had plastics, but everyone threw a jig and a pig. You know, that's where the name came from, and that's what I grew up with. And in the wintertime, old black jig, old black pork chunk, maybe a blue pork chunk if you're feeling frisky, and just a number 11 most of the time, all you need. We used to take a pocket knife and slice the bottom of the belly to give it a little more action, and that old pork will catch fish in the wintertime. And a lot of those fish, a lot of those fish stay shallow all winter. They don't go anywhere. They may not be in the backs of the creeks and the weed mess, but they'll be shallow, some shallow fish all winter. And if you can get a jig to them, boy, you can catch them. Well, I didn't miss that last question.
That was from Scott. He said, "Hey Ron, we are close in age. Do you own stock in BioFreeze for the end of the day throwing the A-rig?" Ben Gay, any of that stuff.
I should. Man, my left elbow, man. I don't know what it is.
I know what it is.
Yeah.
I know exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's old age. That's what this is for, Scott. This is my arthritis medicine.
There you go. Hey, shout out to Stephanie. Stephanie's on here. Stephanie hasn't been on for a few weeks, but she's up and running again. So it's good to see her back on the stream. We always like seeing Stephanie on the stream.
Well, you know what she did, don't you?
What's that?
She took all of her winnings and sold them on eBay and moved to Mexico.
You're right. That's probably exactly what happened. She's out there floating around in the ocean drinking pina coladas.
Yeah, from selling all of her winnings from your stream.
Yeah. Speaking of that, we are going to do a giveaway tonight, and it's the same giveaway we had last week because Ron won the giveaway and he decided to donate it, or just to kind of pay it forward. So we're going to I'll show you what we're going to be giving away. It's going to be like a Hawgz Custom Baits lure package. There's a mix smash of all kinds of stuff in here, and I'll probably throw in some more stuff. This right here, we were talking about A-rigs. This is called the Swim Shaddy, and this is the shark skin color. These things are really cool. This is a unique little bait you don't see out there. There's some old school companies that have something like this, but it's a shad / grub tail. Really cool bait. Works great on
that. Work on an A-rig.
It will work really well on an A rig. Yeah, this is a 3.5 inch. This is a 3 inch. So perfect size for like a 3/0 hook, 2/0 hook, something like that. I will take, it's got this fin on there. I'll take that fin and I just kind of peel it off because your hook wants to come up right where that fin is. You can leave it on. You just have to finagle with it a little bit. But this has got a really good grub action. You can put this on a jig head, fishing it out deep in clear water. People that fish Table Rock, Bull Shows, Norfolk, those kind of lakes, those highland reservoirs, really clear, deep water. This is a grub. Swimming a grub in the wintertime is something that's really popular. It's not as popular as it used to be because of the boot tail swim bait is kind of taking its place. But this right here is kind of a hybrid of the two. It's got that grub tail, but it's still got that shad type body. This shark skin color is a real good shad imitation color. So we're going to throw in a pack of those, which I really like these, but we're going to throw them in there anyway. Got a couple packs of the Razorbacks. It's a 4-inch Razorback, Hawgz Custom Baits. And these are kind of like the Rage Tail Menace. Same basic profile. Some green pumpkin. I throw these on a chatterbait a lot. These things work really good on the back of a chatterbait. You can Texas rig them. I like to put about a 3/0. You can maybe put a 4/0 EWG hook in there, 1/4 ounce weight, flip it around the shallow grass in the wintertime. It's a real subtle action. It doesn't have as much action as, say, like a rage crawl or something, a crawfish. It's got a lot of pincher action. This is more subtle. It's got a little bit of action. You can kind of shake it. This plastic is high float plastic. All the Hawgz stuff is high float plastic, so it floats up. You can put this on a Ned rig, a shaky head, and it's going to kind of float up on you. But I mainly use this as a bladed jig trailer. It works great on a chatterbait. So there's that color, green pumpkin, and then there's this kind of chartreuse pepper color. Chartreuse blue. Let's see. I'll pull it out. Let's see through that bag. So if you're throwing something that's chartreuse and white, that'll go good on the back of that. Just 2 different colors of those. And you can find Hawgz Custom Baits. They got a website. They got a store up and running right now, so you can get on there. They have all kinds of stuff. You know, he used to just pour soft plastics, and then he got into jigs and buzz baits.
He's got some good looking jigs.
He does. He's really gotten. They're hand tied. The skirt colors are phenomenal. I'll be throwing some of those in too. Some of their shaky head worms. This is a 5-inch green pumpkin. This one right here, you know, I was gonna talk about, shaky heads in the wintertime, which is something I throw a lot. I throw a finesse type shaky head bait. And this one right here, I like the Zoom finesse worm, and then I like this one, like a 5-inch little finesse type shaky head worm. High float plastic once again, so once it gets on that stand-up head, this tail is gonna have a tendency to kind of float up and kind of get in the I'll take a chartreuse spike it pin and just kind of hit like an 1/8 inch, maybe a 1/4 inch of that tail, just a little bit, just to kind of give it a little contrast, just to kind of get their attention. And man, you just keep it down there and shake it really slow in that cold water. It gets a lot of bites. This is something you can put on a drop shot too. It's a little bit bigger bait for a drop shot, but you can definitely put it on a drop shot. And then you talk about their jigs. Got several jigs I'll be throwing in. Let's see here. Just grabbed a handful of stuff. This is a thinner skirted jig, which is, if you guys have heard of the Dirks jig, it's really popular in the Ozarks. The Dirks jig has got a real thin skirt material, and this is kind of tailored after that. It's got a little bit thinner skirt material, so it's super finessey. I trim that weed guard down a little bit. They make it long because some people like a little bit longer weed guard, but you can trim that sucker down, put you like a speed crawl maybe. Speed crawl is really good, something real finessey. You could even put a Ned worm on there, like just a 3-inch Ned worm on there. That makes a great finesse trailer for this wintertime bass. That is green pumpkin orange. And then we got some green pumpkin crawl. That's a 3/8 ounce jig. This is a 3/8 ounce jig as well. There's 2 in each one of those. A little bit thicker skirt, still finessey. Good color combination. You can't go wrong with green pumpkin. It doesn't matter any time of the year. Just any watercolor green pumpkin it's going to get you some bites. I flip a lot of green pumpkin in like muddy water. You know, most people go black and blue, but green pumpkin just gets bites. A lot of stuff's green pumpkin. That's just a color that a lot of things in nature are.
Let me jump in a second because I'll forget. On the jig, if you do try that pork, on the jig with the pork, put a piece of worm on the shank of the hook. You can see that's the one I used. It's all chewed up, but that'll keep that pork from sliding up and then rolling over your hook, which will cost you if that happens without that on there, then you're not going to drive that hook through the pork and you're going to miss the fish. So put a little piece of, I use power worm just for the extra scent. So anyway, that'll save someone a headache of a missed fish on that if you're throwing pork.
That's a good tip. Really good tip. Yeah, we'll get back to that jig thing because I want to touch on some more of that too. And then here's some more finesse-y type jigs that he tied. This is a ball head. It's got that finesse, that spider cut on there. This is a kind of a magic crawl color, and that's that razorback for a trailer, for a jig trailer on there. So we'll be throwing in those, and I'll pick out a few other things to throw in the package. So a pretty good prize pack. Some shaky heads to make some shaky heads too. So we'll be throwing some of these. These are a little bit heavier. These are 3/8 ounce shaky heads, so something to throw. You know, a bigger, like the finesse magworm, that kind of stuff. You can even throw like a full-size rage crawl on there. And I think that's it. So decent little prize package tonight. Hawgz Custom Baits. And I don't know, just sometime in the stream, I'll just make a reference to Sasquatch. That's how we do it. If you guys are new to the channel, we typically make a reference to Sasquatch, and then you guess a number between 1 and 200, and whoever guesses that number will win the prize. I'm going to write down a number right now because I didn't get one from Ron. Usually whoever's on the other end of the stream picks a number, and I'll just write a number right here, and we'll do that here in a little bit. Back to that jig though. Another thing with that pork is there is a hole in that pork that your hook goes through. Yeah. That I discovered after being super frustrated and not knowing where to poke that thing through. And I think I called you or I texted you or something. I'm like, how in the hell do you get this thing off your hook? I can't get it off my hook. And I'd stuck it right through the meat of the pork. And you said, there's a hole there, dummy. You just got to, sure enough, it's like right in the very tip of it.
It's not your fault because, I mean, that's old school. And they were discontinued for, I don't know how long, a long time. They didn't make them. So there's a lot of guys that are a little bit younger that just never grew up with it. So I chuckled at you, but I get it. I wouldn't have known either. But yeah, you can just drag the point of the hook on the back of it, the smooth side, just drag the tip of the hook, because sometimes you can't really see it. Mm-hmm. And the hook will find that little slit that they put in there, and then you can put your hook through there. Sometimes it takes a little finagling, but
all right, I got to address this. Jake is a fellow letter carrier for United States Postal Service. And it's funny, I didn't realize that this was like a nationwide deal, but there's people here locally, they have competition to see who can wear shorts the longest throughout the winter. And there was a couple guys that were 2 or 3 years into wearing shorts.
2 or 3 years?
Yes. 2 or 3 years where they would bet, I don't know, they'd bet a 12-pack of beer, or they'd bet a value meal from McDonald's or whatever, 2 liter of soda. It didn't really matter. It was really came down to, it wasn't about what they were going to win. It was about who was stubborn enough to do it. And they went several years without giving it up. And I can't remember who caved in, but Jake said there was somebody in his office, I think they went 12 years. Is that right, Jake? It was either you or somebody was telling me about that. But long story short, his office has the same type of thing where there's guys that wear shorts all year long, and it's like a competition. So I imagine that's going on nationwide. So if you see some guy out there or some gal out there walking around and it's 15 degrees out in shorts, they're in the middle of a heated battle between some of the other carriers in their office. They're not crazy. Well, they might be crazy, but it's more than them just being crazy. They're They got a bet going, man. They're hardcore and they're stubborn. But not me. I don't do that. Yeah, Phil says you can rip the vault out of the grass just like a lipless crankbait. It's not just a cold water bait like most people think. That's true. And sometimes in the fall too, and I haven't done this, but I keep thinking about doing it when those fish are chasing that really small bait, those young of the year shad, the stuff that hatches out there in that shad spawn in the spring. That bait's really small. It's the same size as like that vault, and you get that schooling activity, and they won't hit those bigger baits. I've often thought about throwing that blade bait up in that stuff, but I usually don't have it in the boat because, to me, like Phil was saying, I think it's more of a cold water bait, but I need to kind of keep it in the boat at all times. Let's see here. Let me scroll down through here. Okay, so here we go. Josh says, do you suggest blade baits or yo-yoing a lipless, or is that a similar deal? I think you can use those. I've seen it work. Jerry, I talked about Jerry earlier. I've seen him catch them on a lipless in cold water too, doing the same type of thing. And I was fishing the blade bait like we fish a spoon, just not as aggressive. Just doing really short little rod pulls, like just kind of pull up and just right when you feel it flutter, just kind of and then just drop it.
Yeah.
So watching it on the forward facing sonar or just imagining it in my mind, it's not going more than a foot off the bottom. You're trying to keep it really close to the bottom, but you could probably do that with your reel handle, but it's easier just to point your rod tip kind of horizontal and just pull up maybe a foot and then just hold it and let it glide. And it's going to, as soon as you feel that first couple vibrations, just drop it and let it fall. And that's how I've always caught my fish on it. Does that sound like the way you fish it too, Ron? Or is it different?
And pertaining to his question, they are similar. The difference is, I think, again, depending on which one you're throwing, but that blade bait, you're going to have an opportunity to get to the fish a little quicker, I think, depending on which size you're throwing. And sometimes that down to your fish. Now, the nice thing about the trap, though, and some of them fall differently. Some of them will kind of fall kind of like this. The traps will, and I've actually seen that be beneficial. So I don't know if there's really a right answer to that. It just depends on the fish that day. But yo-yo,
you're going to have
is a good thing.
You're going to have a lot more color options in a lipless. You've got the rattle in the lipless. The blade bait typically doesn't have a rattle. I think there are some companies that make one with a really small rattle in it, but a lipless is a lot more, it's a lot louder. Of course, they make a 3/4 or 1 ounce lipless, so you can get a really big profile if that's what you're looking for. So there are similarities, but there are differences. I would say like a 1/4 ounce to 3/8 ounce trap is going to be similar in size to your like the Demiki Vault. Probably a 1/4 ounce, really. The 3/8 might be just a little bit bigger, but I'm sure there's times when they'd want one over the other.
Yeah.
So you just have to try it. Oh, here's a good one from David Williams. He says, if you're fishing a lake during the winter for largemouth bass and could only fish one bait, what would it be? Ron, I'll let you go on that. Only one. That's tough. So let's say the water is below.
I want to say anything.
We got to put a water temperature on this though, because in the winter, the water could be 52, 53, or it could be 38.
Let's say winter. Okay, Midwest winter.
40-degree water temps.
45 degrees or colder. Let's go there.
40,
first.
Okay.
And if I can only throw one, I'm kind of glad he asked that because we haven't talked about this bait yet. But that old rascal right there, old jerkbait. Old jerkbait. And I don't know if you can see the color very well on that either. That's
let me solo you out here. There you go.
That is black on top. That's one of the silent mega bass ones too. But black and gold, which is a little bit of a forgotten color, that black and gold. And I used to throw basically two colors. I'd have like a minnow color, one that was sunny out, and a gold one when it was cloudy out. That was my jerkbait selection. Now couldn't even begin to tell you how many different colors are out there, but that gold jerkbait on a cloudy day is a little forgotten about. But if I only had one, unless it was super, super muddy water, in the winter time, I mean, winter, winter and here in the Midwest, it'd be hard to have something. It's pretty versatile bait, that jerk bait. You could do a lot of things with that. I think that's probably what I would throw. That or a jig maybe, but I think I would throw a jerk bait.
Yeah, I'm going to go, since you said the jerk bait, I'm going to go with something on the bottom just to mix it up. And a jig is great. And if I had three, that would probably be one of them. But I'm gonna go with a shaky head, because there's been so many times.
Yeah, you're gonna get a bite.
Even when the water's 37 degrees or something, when it's ridiculously cold, that I've been struggling to get bit on a jerkbait for whatever reason, and I picked up a really light shaky head, like an 1/8 ounce shaky head, on 8-pound test with a spinning rod, and caught fish. And I'll show you a bait that I've been throwing around a little bit. You're going to see this in some of my future videos, because I've been throwing this around a little bit in this colder water and catching some fish. And a lot of people don't know about this. It's a really unique bait. It's made by Gator Bait Company. It's called a beaver bug. It's a crazy looking shaky head.
Oh yeah, that you caught some fish on that jerkbait day on that.
I did. Yeah, and I've been throwing it around, and each time I've thrown it around, I've got some fish on it. But it's the craziest looking bait. It's really small. I don't know exactly how long it is. It might be 4 inches, maybe a little bit longer, but shorter. But it's got these crazy legs right here, and it's got this paddle tail. Now, a couple things you can do with this paddle tail. You can leave it like it is. You can split it down the middle if you want, or you can make a slice at an angle and make kind of like a speed crawl, like a ultra vibe speed crawl type of thing. You get a little bit more action out of it, but it works great just like this. This sucker here too, if you put it on a heavier head and you reel it in, this paddle tail you can feel it thump. It thumps just like a speed worm. It's got a really good thumping feel to it. But something about this thing, it's really petite. It's like it's not very wide at all. You put this on like a 3/16 ounce shaky head with 3/0 hook, and this sucker is deadly. I'll hit the tips of this like I do most of the time, but I'll just put a little bit of chartreuse on there. I really like that contrast. But this is I think this is called Magic Crawl. It's got the green pumpkin. It's got a little bit of that pearl blue in there. I don't know if it's showing up on the camera, but
yeah,
that they make a green pumpkin purple too. Baitworks is carrying some of these. If not, you can go check them out. Gator, their website. I think they carry them on Tackle Warehouse. I think might have their stuff. But this is a cool little bait that if you're not familiar with it, pick up a couple packs of them. It's a super finessey deal. You can flip it too. I mean, you can Texas rig it and flip it. But for this cold water jig trailer too, it's a good jig trailer. I forgot about that. But for this cold water fishing, it's something that really excels when they won't bite a lot of other stuff. The other bait that I'll throw on a shaky head is like a 5-inch finesse worm or 4 or 5-inch finesse worm. That little Hawgz Custom Bait worm that I was showing you a while ago. This one right here. That is a really good cold water bait. That one right there, something that floats up high. I tend to like something that doesn't have salt when when I want it to float up like that. So their plastics aren't salted, but this right here, or the Zoom finesse worm and a watermelon candy, is one of my all-time super, super cold water baits. But so I went with a shaky head, but a jerkbait, it's hard to argue with a jerkbait. I mean, that's got to be the top 3 best baits in cold water ever.
Yeah, if you got a jerkbait, some sort of jig, and a shaky head, you can about go anywhere in the country in the winter, I think. The A-rig's great and all that stuff. Don't, the spoon, but those 3 are that's just money. And do you remember the trip that remember when we shot the Vexus video and then we went fishing? The lake had just thawed out and we went fishing after we shot that video. That shaky head was we pulled up on that one point, and that shaky head was really the only thing that was going that day.
Yeah.
The lake had just thawed out. The fish really weren't in a very good mood, but you caught 7 or 8 on that shaky head, and I was being stubborn with the spoon, and the only thing I caught, I think I snagged a gizzard shad, and that was my catch of the day. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I got all slime from a gizzard shad while you were catching fish. That old shaky head will save the day.
Yeah, it does. It's just, it's finessey. Sometimes they don't. A lot of times in the winter, I find they don't want a big package. They want something more finessey.
Yeah.
Do you find like a jig? You talk about throwing a black jig a lot. Is it more of a big bulky jig, or is it more of a kind of a compact type jig?
No, like a 3/8 ounce jig with a number 11 pork chunk on the back. Trim the skirt back a little bit and let her eat. I mean, as basic can be. That's it. I mean, and you'll catch them. I don't care if it's sunny out, cloudy out, dirty water, clear water. It doesn't matter.
It's back, Michael. It's back. The old number 11.
Yeah,
it's
like, a little pricey now, but
it's a little. That's what I was just getting ready to say. It's like $12 for 3, I believe. But as long as you put it back in the juice, you can have it for just about forever.
Here's a little tip. It's actual pork skin, right? So none of them are. There's no 2 pieces of pork that are. When I open my pork jar and I see that perfect piece of pork in there, right? But most of them aren't. But to loosen them up, you got to loosen them up so that they fish right. So tie it on, make sure your knot's good, and take that pork on the end of your jig and kind of do this and slap that jig on the water with that pork rind. Some guys will take a hammer to it. I'll just slap it on the water for about 3 or 4 minutes, and that'll loosen it up, and those legs will start to flow a little bit. And as you fish, it'll get better as you fish. You'll get better and better and better. And the best pork is one that you've used a lot. So, yeah, they'll kind of get dull colored, and then they're perfect when they get like that.
Okay. Brown Bait says put a chartreuse worm on there. Add a little contrast to that black jig. We could have went sideways on that pork thing, but we'll keep it. We'll keep it in line here. Yeah, that pork's, it's one thing you got to remember is you got to keep it in the water. If you're going to be throwing a jerkbait or throwing an A-rig around a lot and you've got that pork rigged up on your jig, just kind of leave it hanging in the water or put it back in the jar or something. Cause it'll take a long time in the cold weather to dry out, but it will dry out over time.
Yeah, and you want to keep it as long as you can, because the older it gets and the more you use it, it's like a catcher's mitt or something. It gets broke in, and that's when it's good.
And black, I was reading something about crawfish, and one of the reasons that black and blue has a tendency to work really good in the winter is crawfish become darker in the winter. That's according to what I read. I'm certainly no crawfish biologist, but I pick up little tips here and there. And there was a chart that showed the different crawfish colors, different times of the year. And they have a tendency to be a little darker, more towards a black hue in the wintertime. So that make perfect sense. And I've witnessed it in the boat. I've been throwing green pumpkin stuff and saw you throw that little black jig with pork chunk on there and catch fish. So that got me thinking, there's something to black in the wintertime.
I can tell you a little story, just a little family history on that black jig. My dad used to fish. There's a circuit back in the 70s. I'm not sure when it went defunct, but there was two main circuits in the 70s in the United States. One was Bassmasters, and the other one was BCA, Bass Casters Association. This is before Red Man and all that. And my dad used to fish BCA, him and my uncle both. And they would travel, and they were down on Millwood Lake, Texarkana, Texas-Arkansas border, Millwood Lake. And my dad drew Basil Bacon. And if you don't know who Basil Bacon is, Google Basil Bacon. He is one of the founding fathers of flipping. And my dad drew him on Millwood, which is, I don't know if the timber's still standing. Had a bunch of standing timber at the time. And that's what they did, to throw a black jig for 3 days. And I think Dad got 11th, or there's an old picture at home of him holding his trophy. That old black jig, and DaRosas have been throwing a black jig in the winter ever since.
It's a family staple, huh?
Yeah. I think I've told you I used to get a pint of pork for Christmas.
You did. That's right. Yeah. Where's Millwood?
Texas-Arkansas border.
Okay.
Texarkana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting story. Oh, here's a question from Bill. What's up, Bill? It's good to see you on here, man. Bill's like, shout out to Bill, man. Bill, I put Bill on his first punching fish a couple years ago. He fished in the 9-9 Club with me. I fished the 9-9 Club for years. But he's been with this channel since its inception. I think he's left a comment on every one of my videos, good, bad, or indifference. He's always been kind enough to leave a comment. And
that helps.
Man, I've told you this before, Bill, but I appreciate the support, man. I really appreciate you. You're a good dude, and it's always good to see you on here. And he says, do you fish the pork fat side up or down?
Very good question. Very good question. Both. I'll do it both. And there's two different situations. If you hook the pork, you got the smooth side that goes across the back. If you hook it through that first, so that smooth side is facing down and the chunk part's up top, it'll fall slower. Okay? The jig will glide a little bit more. So typically in the winter, that's how I will do it. However, if you want the jig to fall more vertically and more quickly, hook it through the fat end first, and then that way the top of those legs are on the top of that bait, and they'll kick up faster. That jig will fall a lot more vertically, a little bit quicker. So it depends on what you're fishing and how you want to do it. But in cold water, I usually go through the smooth end first, because that slows the rate of the fall of the jig. And jig fishing is 100% about rate of fall. You have to have the right rate of fall when you're jig fishing. That's what I'm looking for when I'm jig fishing.
It's good stuff, man.
Yep.
Really good stuff. What's up, Jim? Good to see you on here. Fat down. Jim says fat down. Yeah, that fall rate, man, it's so critical. I mean, there's like a lot of guys that have been on this live stream, a lot of professional fishermen, they'll throw a 3/4 or even a 1 ounce jig up in a 2 foot of water, pitching stuff.
Yeah. Trigger and a bite.
It's about that fall rate.
Yep.
Everybody's throwing a 3/8 ounce, and that's a certain fall rate. So you could go a 1/4 ounce and get a really slow fall rate, but a lot of those guys, they like a 3/4 ounce. So that fish is either gonna eat it, get out of the way, or get smacked in the head. They got to make their mind up really quick.
Greg Hackney talked about that. I think it was the second classic that Hank Cherry won. I don't remember. It was one of the Bassmaster. I don't know if he was. I don't remember what video it was, but it was in regards to that tournament. I'm almost sure. Those fish were hanging up pretty close to the surface underneath the grass. And one of the, I don't know if it was Zone, I don't remember who it was, talked about, well, would you want a slow falling jig there? They were talking to Hackney, and Hackney's like, no, that's where I want a heavy jig, and I want that jig to fall really fast past that fish to trigger that bite. That was kind of eye-opening to me, because I can't really say I always thought of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But in the wintertime or cold water, I'm really that rate of fall, and you'll know it when you see it. When you fish a jig enough, you'll know, okay, that looks right. You know, you'll get some feedback from the fish, and then you'll change jigs or something, and the fall rate is different, and then you quit getting bites. So that's really, really, really important.
Yeah, that's something. Back to the shaky head for a minute. Well, real quick, let's address this. Jake says one guy went 9 years until management finally paid the bets off and made us wear shorts one day on day, or probably pants on day. That's impressive. 9 years. Stephanie said she'd just buy the beer and get it over with.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah, me too. But back to that shaky head a little bit. In the fall rate, that's one thing that I fished a shaky head a lot. It's something that I've been fishing a lot of years, and I've done a lot of experimentation with line sizes and weights and profiles of different baits and stuff. And something that I've really learned is when the fish are in a funk, there's something about an 1/8 ounce shaky head. If you can force yourself to fish it, you got to be a lot more patient. You got to be very patient, especially at deeper depths. But I'll fish an 1/8 ounce shaky head with, say, a 5-inch just finesse worm on 8-pound test, even out in 20 foot of water. But there's something about not just the fall rate, but when it's on the bottom, I really feel like there's something about the noise that a lighter jig head makes when it's clicking on the bottom. It stirs up less dust, and it also has more of a gliding action. Back to the gliding action you were talking about with the pork. There's something I feel about an 1/8 ounce jig head. When you pick it up, it has a tendency to just kind of glide. Where if you were throwing a 1/4 ounce, it's going to lift up just a little bit, but it wants to get back down to the bottom of the lake really quick. And it wants to kind of scoot. When you kind of pull on it, it kind of just scoots along the bottom. Where if you pull on that 1/8 ounce, it has a tendency to just kind of lift. And it's a really slow kind of gliding action. And I've seen it enough to know that it can make a difference, that really finessey gliding action. So not only is it more silent on the bottom, there's not as much weight pushing down on the bottom of the lake. So you're not going to get as hard of a click with the 1/8 ounce as you will a 1/4 ounce. Now, sometimes in warmer water, I've seen it work the other way. I've seen guys, I was fishing with Del Coven down on Bull Shows last year, the year before, and he was throwing a heavier jig, getting more bites, and I was throwing a lighter jig. So there's times when, this is warmer water, of course, but there's times when it goes the other way. They want something stirring up dust. They want something making more noise. But in the winter, when the fish are, tend to be kind of funky and more finicky, there's times when that 1/8 ounce head will get you more bites than a 1/4 ounce. You just got to be patient. It's going to take a little bit longer to get down there. You're going to have to pull it slower to keep bottom contact and to tell what's going on there. And you're going to have to pay attention to your bites, because a lot of times you don't feel that bite. You may feel a little tick, but a lot of times your bait just kind of goes away. It doesn't. You kind of keep pulling on it, and you just don't really feel it. It's so light that those fish can just suck it up really easy. They don't really have to. They don't have to use much. They don't have to pull a lot of water through their gill plates to suck it up. It's so light, it just kind of comes in. So you got to really be focused on it, because we get in a habit of really feeling that bait on the bottom, especially if we fish like a Carolina rig or a 3/4 ounce football jig. Something like an 1/8 ounce takes a lot more focus, and it's cold out there, you know, your mind's wandering and stuff, and you can't feel. A lot of times you got gloves on, but throwing like a spinning rod with braided line and say a 7 to 10 foot leader of fluorocarbon, you get that braid is super sensitive as long as you keep it tight, and then you've got low stretch, so you don't have to pull it too far to get a hook in them. But I really feel like that 1/8 ounce jig head is a game changer. I hate to use the word game changer, but I think you can get a lot more bites in the wintertime with a little bit lighter jig head.
Those little details, and it's in all, not just the wintertime. We're talking about winter fishing, but those details are so often the difference. And a lot of times we won't even know what the little detail is that's creating success. You've seen it 1,000 times, 2 guys in the boat doing the same thing, and one guy's catching them and one guy's not. And often that's because there's one guy's doing something a little different, maybe has a little different line size, whatever it is. Those little tiny details are huge. And sometimes in the winter, when those bite windows are smaller, those details become magnified. And it's really can be the difference between having a good day and a frustrating day. I'll get a real quick example, not on a jig, but after we caught those fish on the jerkbait a couple weeks ago, a buddy of mine a college friend of mine bought a house on the lake, and he was down here. And so I was like, well, I'll come by the dock and pick you up and we'll go catch a few fish. And I had that jerkbait tied on the rod that I was using that day. Well, this particular day, it was sunny out. And I still like to throw monofilament when I can on a jerkbait. I like to stretch the monofilament. I don't lose as many fish. The problem, or not really a problem, but the characteristic of monofilament is it tends to float. So your jerkbait doesn't get down as deep. I had the exact same jerkbait tied on an identical spinning rod, but with fluorocarbon. Okay, so his bait was getting a little deeper. So off we went fishing. And my buddy doesn't fish. I mean, he fishes a little bit, but he doesn't fish. And he's kicking my rear end. I bet he caught, I don't know, he caught 7 or 8. I had 0. I got to thinking, I just tied his rod up real quick. And I got thinking, he's got that fluorocarbon on there. He's getting that bait down there a little bit. It was a sunny day. His fish were down a little bit further. At least that's what I was surmising. My buddy starts giving me crap. And he's like, "What's wrong with you, DaRosa? You're supposed to be the fisherman. You ain't catching nothing." So he's giving me the business, So I said, "Buddy, I tell you what, I'm too lazy to change baits, but I think I know what's going on. As soon as that sun gets behind those trees, those fish come up a little bit, I'm going to smoke your ass." So he kept talking. That sun got below the trees, and I caught like 10 in a row on that fluorocarbons because that bait was riding a little bit higher, and I could get away with it. The day you and it was windy and it was cloudy, and
you're throwing mono, right?
So yeah, in mono, and so it was like when that sun went below those trees, it was like someone threw a switch. He didn't catch a fish. Of course, I was at this point. I wasn't giving him any water either.
Yeah,
he was talking smack.
Front ended him. Like, hey, that's what he gets, man, for talking smack, man.
Yeah, so that's what you can do to a good friend. So. But that was really, I'm convinced that was the difference. It was that line, and that's those little things. And that's another reason, never listen to doc talk. Because even if the guy's telling you the truth, he may think he's telling you the truth, but he probably doesn't even realize every little thing that he or she was doing to catch those fish. So find your own fish and don't worry about doc talk because you never really know.
No, you're so right. And everybody fishes a bait differently.
Yeah, everybody. And none of it's wrong. It's just different.
Yeah, Stephanie asks, what size do you throw on your jerkbait? Or what size jerkbait are you typically throwing?
That's a really good question. I'll throw as light as 6-pound test. If I'm not in a lot of cover and I'm trying to get the bait down. 6-pound test is actually stronger than you think. You got to have a rod that, a light action rod, because you can't. You got to be careful. And then I've thrown I've thrown as heavy as 17, but typically on the other end, I won't throw any heavier than 10. 10 would be my normal top end. And like I'll throw that like around like lay down logs or weed edges or whatever, and I'll go as light as 6. 8-pound is a good 8-pound is a good happy medium for just going jerkbait fishing. You don't really know where you're going to be throwing it. And I'm a little different than people. I like to throw it on a spinning rod when I can. I like in the wintertime when those guides freeze up, spinning rod's not near the problem. Spinning rod reel works better in cold weather sometimes. Now if I'm throwing my jerkbait if I'm specifically going to go throw it on laydowns, I'm more accurate with the bait caster than I'll throw my jerkbait on a bait casting rod where I'm having to be more target oriented. But if I don't have to be real precise with my casting, I'll throw a spinning rod. So that's just my thing. It's not right or wrong. It's just my thing. But on the light line, you almost have, like when I go to 6, you almost have to do that on spinning.
Yeah, I throw 8 and 10. I kind of moved up to 10 last year. I don't really know why. I just decided to.
At 25 bucks a piece.
Yeah. And I tell you what, I caught, let's see, I think it was two or 3 years ago, I caught 2 stripers that were like 22 to 25 pound class.
Yeah.
Throwing a Mega Bass Vision 110 on 8-pound tests, and I got them in. It took a while. And then the next year I moved up to 10-pound tests, and I caught that giant muskie over there at Kincaid on 10-pound test.
I remember that.
Which I have no idea how I got them in. So, I mean, 8-pound tests, you can get a big fish in with 8-pound tests. And so I really wouldn't be worried about fishing 8 or 10-pound tests. The mono fluorocarbon thing that you just talk about, that's huge right there. That's like one of those good little tips. And then as far as the actual size of the jerkbait, I throw like 2 different sizes. I mean, I'll throw just the 110 size. The Berkeley Stunna makes a 112, which, that's the same. It's the same thing, same size. But I'll throw the Lucky Craft, the SP 78 DD, which is the deeper diver version. So it's a 78 millimeter. It's a little bit smaller. I guess it'd become comparable maybe to the Vision 110 Junior. Actually the 78 might be a little bit smaller than the Junior even. But those are the 2 main sizes. I don't ever go to like the 130 size. They make like some of the old Rogues. They had the bigger Rogues. They make I think Jackal Rearrange. There's a couple other companies that make a bigger, like a 130 style jerkbait. I really haven't messed around with those in years, but I just keep it like 110 or I'll keep the 78. So
yeah, I don't throw it as much as I used to, but in standing timber, used to throw one of the old spoonbill Rogues. I think Cotton Cordell made one too. I don't know if the Cotton Cordell one was suspending though. I think we might have we put lead solder on those hooks. That was a long time ago. The old spoonbill, which is a little bit bigger bait. We throw that over, and I don't know why it seemed to work around standing timber, but it did. But that spoonbill one, you can work through the timber. The bill works like a weed guard. You can work that through some pretty thick stuff. What do you say?
I need to catch up on these comments. Oh, there's the typical.
Oh, okay. They're having fun with that.
Pork abuse comments. I knew they were probably down there somewhere. I'm way back up at the top.
Pork abuse.
It was too easy to throw that out there.
Yeah. Set myself up for that. That's okay.
Yes,
I'm
you
a big
did.
Boy.
Let's see what else we got here.
I need to order some more pork. That's probably the only thing I really need to get in low. I actually need to order some.
Blockett gives Basil Bacon shout out. I remember he had the bacon rind? Was one of his baits.
Basil Bacon?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. Was that
Yeah, there's
his?
something called the bacon rind. I do
Oh, I don't
remember
know.
that.
I don't know that.
One more thing about the jerkbait, and you kind of touched on it with the mono and the fluorocarbon, but there are times when those fish won't come up for the jerkbait, like a traditional 110, just a standard jerkbait. It's going to get down there about 4 to 6 foot, depending on 4 foot with your mono probably, and then 6 foot with your fluorocarbon, depending on how long you let it sit. Usually fluorocarbon sinks. So if you let it sit for a long time, it'll kind of start pulling it down slowly over time, depending on how long of a cast. But there are times when those fish are down in 15 foot of water and they won't come up to 5 foot to get that bait.
Right.
So you got to get down there in their face. And this is like a Strike King 300 deep. This bait right here legitimately gets down to 10 and 11 foot on 10-pound fluorocarbon on just a decent cast. It gets down really good. It's got that really big bill. And like that spoonbill rogue you were talking about, it's pretty good around cover. That bill deflects off of cover pretty good, just like a crankbait would. And you can just kind of, instead of jerking it when it gets around that, you can just kind of slow pull it along those laydowns. It'll help it kind of worm it through that stuff. But this bait, these deeper diver ones, the Vision 110 +2, that +1 that they make gets down there around 8, but the +10 gets a little bit deeper. The Stunna, they have a +1 version that gets down around 7. But most jerkbait companies have a bigger build jerkbait to get you down there a little bit deeper. So that's something else to consider if you're fishing through an area and you don't have access to a graph and you're fishing a traditional jerkbait and you're not getting bites. You may need to be going down there just a little bit deeper. The fish are not wanting to move up. And on the flip side of that, if you think they may be up shallower, you may need to make sure you're throwing that standard size jerkbait on mono. Or I see you do this a lot, Ron, is instead of pulling down to the side and trying to encourage that bait to go deeper, I've seen you like pull up, like jerk up. And that keeps that bait up higher in the water column. That's
I do that. I do that a ton when I'm fishing the edge of a grass line. Depending on where I think my bait landed, if I think, oh crap, I threw it a little too far, I'll work that, trying to keep that bait out of the middle of the grass until I get it to where I think I can jerk it down. But yeah, so you're just controlling where your bait is. On that mono, one other thing too is, again, mono fluorocarbon braid, none of them are right or wrong. It's just they all have different properties. But in the winter times, as we're talking about winter fishing, fluorocarbon can have a lot of memory. And now if you're fishing a braid to fluoro leader, it's not such a big deal. But if you've got your spinning reel or whatever loaded with just fluorocarbon, and when it's cold, that memory can be problematic. And that's one nice thing about since I throw a lot of jerk baits on spinning, the mono doesn't have the memory as bad as that fluorocarbon in the cold. It still has memory, but it's not as bad as the fluorocarbon. So it just depends on what you're trying to do. But if I can hook a fish, once that fish is pinned, I'm going to catch more of them on mono than I will with fluorocarbon, just because they're just I like that stretch. Just like when you're throwing monofilament on a crankbait, it's the same thing.
Yeah, there's definitely something to it for sure. Man, we got a good crowd in here tonight. It's really cool to see everybody in here. We're gonna do that giveaway at 9:30. 9:30 is coming up. As soon as I see 9:30, we'll do that giveaway. I know a lot of people are hanging out here to see that giveaway. Colors on jerkbait. I know one thing I know for sure is that I've seen is a white belly on an overcast day for me.
Yeah,
has seemed to make a difference over the years. Any other trends or tips that you've seen on as far as colors?
I'm not, you fish with me enough. I'm not one of these guys that worries about minute details of color. That's just not what I worry about a lot. I'm more worried about just where the fish are and getting the bait to them. But of all the baits that seem to be color sensitive, a jerkbait is one of them. I have to say that I've seen color of jerkbait make a difference in as much as any other lure. I guess because it's, you think about it, you're in wintertime, jerk, pause, they get to look at it a long time. So color does make a difference. Couple basic things. Cloudy days. I like this one here. I like the gold on a cloudy day. I like that gold on a cloudy day. Sometimes a little orange on the front of the belly. Gabe's correct on that white belly. That bone colored or white on a cloudy day.
Yeah. It's got that little bit of orange on the belly.
Yeah,
it's a good color.
On cloudy days, I like the jerk baits that you can't see through them. I don't want to be able to see through the paint scheme, whatever it is. I want a solid color. Mega Bass offers some now that are like a matted finish. They're not shiny. Those are kind of cool. But then on a sunny day and really clear water, I like those translucent ones. And I couldn't even begin to pronounce all the different names of the ones that they have out there, but experiment with them, and whatever lakes you're fishing, there'll be one that they like, and the fish will let you know pretty quick. And if they're eating it, then you got something that they want, and stick with it, because that color does make a difference on jerkbait, as much as I hate to admit that.
Yeah, it does. I mentioned next week we're going to have Joey from Crocagator on here. And,
cool.
Yeah, and Connor Cunningham and then Jason Husky are going to be on here. But then the following week, we're going to have Mike McClellan as a guest. And
there you go.
A lot of you know Mike McClellan. He's the guy that helped design the Spro Mix Stick, which is one of the best cold water jerk baits, in my opinion. This is the Spro Mix Stick.
Dude, is that the one you smoked them on up at Mille Lacs?
That is the one. I always have. I keep one of these on my wallet, man. That's the Ghost Magic Purple. It's got that white belly, but it's that translucent purple color.
Oh my God!
But this is a Spro Mix Stick. So we're gonna have McClellan on here in 2 weeks. So definitely, you guys that are on here that aren't regulars, make sure you stop back by here in a couple weeks, and he's going to really break down the jerkbait, and he's going to go through the rock crawler. He helped develop the rock crawler, which has really put the aftermarket old school wiggle wart deal out of commission. The wiggle warts were so popular for so long, and then the rock crawlers come out, and it's just as effective, in my opinion, as the old school wiggle wart. It gets down a little we're gonna go over rock crawlers. We're gonna go over that winter deep, like mid depth cranking. We're gonna go over the jerkbait stuff. So a couple of weeks we'll have a really in-depth jerkbait / cold water crankbait video. So make sure you tune in for that one.
I need to order a couple of those. I had a couple. When we went to Mille Lacs, it was in the middle of when you couldn't buy any tackle. Everything was out.
Yeah.
Remember? And
yes.
I'm telling you, people, Gabe threw, I don't know, you threw several different colors of jerkbaits. But when he put that rascal in the water, it was like the water would boil. Walleye, smallmouth, it was ridiculous.
Do you remember the guys? He's right. It was something about this color.
It was.
I think it was more the color than the actual it being like a Spro Mix stick. I think it was something about that color. But I remember the guy. There was 2 or 3 boats not too far from us, and a couple of them were throwing jerkbaits, and no
one was catching anything.
No one was catching anything, and I was wrecking them, and I kind of felt
bad. And the only thing
I
I could do is stand there with the damn net.
They were wanting that bait.
Oh, yeah. It's
I caught a 512 smallie. A 512
yeah, and you wondered
smallie
if you were
on
going to
TV.
catch your personal best up there.
I caught it a bunch of times. It was
Yeah.
ridiculous. Every day I caught a new personal best. But yeah,
that was your first day, though.
that was my first day. Caught a 512.
Yeah, that was your first day. You caught a 512 on that jerkbait right there.
Unbelievable. And I only had 2 of them. I broke one off on a 4+ pound smallmouth that jumped and broke my line. We saw it come out of the water.
Yeah.
And then the other one I broke off on a toothy critter of some sort. I was just hitting the jerkbait and it just went limp. It was just gone.
Yeah.
It was just slack. Just sliced me off.
You got sharked.
Yeah. I got sharked, man. But something, you guys go up there north, Ghost Magic Purple. And it works down here too.
Yeah, it works here too.
Yeah. It's a great color.
But that was a great example of color making a difference, because you had the right cadence and all that, but they wanted that jerkbait. Yeah, everything that swam in that lake wanted that jerkbait that day.
You just load up on those 22, 24-inch walleyes.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. That is good stuff. Let's see what else we got down here. We got Rich on here. What's up, Rich? Say what's up, Uncle
What's
Ron?
up?
Rich has got to be jonesing. I think he's got a power plant lake up there somewhere he can go to if he really gets hard up.
Maybe he can. There's a river. Is it part of the St. Croix? I can't remember. There's a warm water discharge up there. I think it's, I don't know if it's St. Croix. I can't remember. But I see pictures of guys up there. They wade and they fish. I was taught by a guy, the smaller jig. Yeah, that was old Freddie Washburn. Yeah. Miss Fred.
JP says he fishes a 3/16-ounce chicky at 80% of the time. He likes to use straight 7-pound fluorocarbon, but sometimes they prefer the 1/8 ounce for sure when the water is colder. Yeah, it's good that we found the same thing.
I bought I don't know what other brands make it, but I bought that 7-pound Sunline makes some fluoro in 7-pound. It's pretty good stuff.
You ever tried any of that, this kind of hybrid line? Kevin says, what about the hybrid line, which has some monofill, but the sink of fluoro?
No, I haven't. I have not.
I've used some of that coated. I think P-Line makes some copolymer that's got a fluorocarbon coating on it that I've used. Some of that stuff has a lot of memory. You gotta watch it. Actually, there's some braid out there that's got the characteristics of fluorocarbon that sinks, that I was drop shotting with for a while. I don't know if it's Power Pro. I'm not sure who makes it, but it did.
Sinking braid?
Yeah, it was sinking braid for drop shotting. You don't get that big bow in your line. It like keeps a straighter connection. Yeah, Michael. It's funny, when I was messing with all these jerkbaits, I was thinking about this video that I was working on tonight that'll be out Friday. It's Ron and I had a really good day jerkbaiting, and you were telling a story about your Mille Lacs days and some kid that was really frustrated. He had his tackle box open and he was trying to get a treble hooked lure out, and he kept shaking it, and this big old wad of lures came out, and he just got pissed off, and he just tied onto one of them, and when he made the cast, they all came off.
Yeah, he came back with one lure. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, it's classic. That story is going to be in the video, because I edited it out and kind of up the audio so you can hear what was going on. That's a funny story.
Did I tell that day jerkbait fishing?
Yeah, you did. You tell it.
Did I?
Yep.
Yeah, that was hilarious. He was so mad. He was so mad he couldn't get his lure out, and he was just befuddled when he came in with one lure. It was great.
Yep. Mission accomplished. Yeah, man, I see those crappie guys catching 5 and 6 pound bass on 4-pound test, 6-pound test.
Oh, it happens all the time.
Yeah. And that's short line too. You know, I guess they've got the flex of the rod, but that's it.
Yeah.
I'll show you one more cool jig that works really good on smallmouth, and it's made by Cumberland Pro Lures. It's called a Rockhound. It's made for wintertime fishing, and it's tied up. It's got, I think it's deer hair. I can't remember if it's deer hair or elk. Deer. I want to say it's deer. Anyway, this sucker right here, super finessey little jig. It's tied on the Procaster jig, and that's my other favorite jig for cold water is the Cumberland Pro Procasters. That's a Procaster head, but it's got this hair tied on there, and that hair in cold water just has it's just a different action. Super finessey, and I've just got a this is a Max Scent. I think it's the little meaty chunk on there. And I didn't have my pork. Well, actually, I did put the pork in the boat that day, but pork's going to go on this. I've thrown this with pork. This thing right here, I had a really good day smallmouth fishing last year on Clearwater Lake with Phil throwing this. I was actually throwing a different color. It was this color right here. So this kind of brown and orange, green pumpkin. They have like 4 or 5 different colors. But you guys that are smallmouth fishermen, cold water smallmouth fishermen, Eastern Tennessee, Kentucky Lake, even up north when the ice comes off or before the ice goes on, this little haired jig like this is a killer. This is a Ned bug, like a Ned. It's like a Ned rage crawl.
Okay.
I had a lot of good luck on that. It pairs up. It's super finessey. It's just a really good finessey bait for those wintertime fish. So I've got this tied on. I'll start throwing this around. I'll throw what's the other one I've got on? Oh, I've got a Procaster on is the other jig that I'll throw a lot. But I'll take that jig and I'll like finesse cut it. So I'll throw a 3/8 ounce Procaster. And actually towards late winter, when that water's at its lowest point, I'll even throw like a 1/4 ounce jig, which is super finessey, but it forces me to really throw it. But I really trim that skirt material down. A lot of times here's the bend of the hook. I'll trim it right to the bend of the hook. I don't go straight across. I kind of stagger it at a little bit of an angle. I think it looks more buggy. So I want some of the skirt material to be different lengths. It's just something I learned in fly fishing. If you can make something look buggier, it gives me a lot more confidence. I don't know if it makes a difference, but to me, it makes a difference. And if it makes a difference to you, it makes a difference because you're going to have more confidence when you're throwing it.
Yeah.
But I really trim the skirt material down, and you can gather this skirt material in front of the band and really give it a finesse cut. Just give it that spider cut. That's something that really gets a lot more bites. To me, it's about a smaller profile in the wintertime. You know, you hear some guys that say big is better because the fish are cold and they don't want to waste energy feeding on something small. They want one big bite. And Brown's that was on here, Brown Bait Company, he's talking about throwing those big swim baits and stuff. So that makes sense. You know, some places they do like a really big meal. They just want to eat once and not eat anything for 3 or 4 days and then go back and get something big. But if you're wanting to get more bites, I think you're definitely going to get more bites in the wintertime throwing like a smaller finessey type of package.
Yeah, there's definitely a place for a big bait in the winter. I mean, they're eating gizzard shad, and those select fish that are doing that, you know, it makes sense on a big bait, but 100% you're fishing for the minority of the fish. If you're just wanting to catch fish, downsizing, especially in today's pressured lakes, downsizing just in general is going to get more and more important. One thing we have, I'm not to change the focus from the jig. We just kind of don't forget the underspin in the winter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We gotta at least mention it. And if you haven't thrown an underspin a lot, the Cumberland one makes a good one. This is a Scottsboro tackle from down there at Gunnersville. The key though on the whichever one you use one that's got an arm that extends a fair amount away from the head to make room for the plastic when you put it on the hook. Some of them, they don't extend far enough, and then the blade wants to hit the plastic and it ruins the action of it. So I like the Scottsboro tackle one because the arm that little arm hangs down far enough it gets away from any plastic I put on there.
Yeah, it's got that screw lock too, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, it's pretty good little little underspin. But the underspin, when in doubt, that thing will get a bite.
Yeah, and that whether you've got the blade on the swim bait or not, even a small Kitech just on a ball head jig,
yeah, just a swim bait,
is something about that smaller bait. 6 cents, the Divine, I think it's the Divine swim bait, or Divine underspin is another good one that I hear a lot of people talk about. I fish the Cumberland Pro Lures, the Apex underspin. I've been fishing that for several years and it's awesome, but I'm pretty sure they discontinued that. So there's still some out there on Omnia, carry some, Tackle Warehouse carry some. Baitworks never got them in because they discontinued them. So they're out there, and it's been my favorite for years and years. There's been a couple people on the stream that have won those through giveaways, and they've had really good success with them. It's a great underspin. So I've got a stash of them, but eventually I'm going to be running out. So it's good to know that Scottsboro makes a good one.
Scottsboro makes a really good one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't know that about. I didn't know they discontinued that. I'm surprised by that, actually.
It's a good one. It's a good one. I'm going to stay on him though. Hopefully he'll bring it back out sometime, because he puts that gold blade on there. That something about that little gold blade. My favorite color that he makes, I don't have it with me. I've shown it on the stream several times, but it's a white head, and it's got a little bit of orange or chartreuse on the throat, and then it's got a size 2 gold willow. And that size 2 gold willow, when it's kind of overcast, it works good in sun as well, but they don't see that gold as much, and I think it just puts on a different flash for some reason. I've just had a ton of luck on that gold blade. I got a lot more confidence throwing that gold blade than I do silver, but you can catch them on silver too. Let's answer this question. Yeah, I know I'm 5 minutes past, but that's typical. I'm always late to the party. Let's answer this question, and then we'll do the giveaway, and then if there's still some people on here, then we'll keep going with this as long as people are interested in.
On this one, I love a loop knot. If I'm throwing a swim jig, if I'm throwing a finesse jig, a loop knot, and Scott can attest to this, will impart a different action to a jig. But on a jerk bait, I usually leave the split ring on there, and that's because of the adjustment on jerk baits can be really sensitive to how they float in the water. So I usually just leave the split ring on there so that it acts the way it's supposed to in the water. And I prefer, on a jerk bait, I prefer the nose down a little bit. Some guys like the tail down, whatever. I like the nose down a little bit. So I leave the split ring on there. But Scott brings up a really, really, really good basic thing in the loop knot. The loop knot is a way underutilized part of your terminal tackle, I guess. It does help a bait achieve its ultimate action or whatever. It's amazing what it does to a swim jig. Another thing on a loop knot, and this is true in crappie, anyone that crappie fishes will know this. When you're like a Demiki rig, you want to tie a loop knot if you're bass fishing, because you want that bait horizontal. And if you tie a regular knot and then you get hung up or you snap your bait, that knot shifts and now your bait's hanging, off kilter. A loop knot will always hang horizontal. In crappie fishing, that's vital. You got to have that. Crappie are really sensitive to that bait being horizontal. If it gets like this, then they don't bite it as good. The loop knot's really important for vertical jigging like that too.
Yeah, I use a snap for a couple different reasons. It does help with that nose down presence because it is a little bit of weight. I just use a stand. I don't even know what size it is. It's the medium size. you know, your fingers are cold out there and it's hard to get these suckers open as it is. So I like
Makes
that.
it easy to change baits during the
Yeah,
day.
that medium or large, you can't really tell, but they make some really small ones, and you don't want the small ones. They're just, you know, your fingers are big. You just can't work with them. So the medium sizes work good for me. And like you said, you can change baits. You can change colors really quick. If you're, a lot of times I'll have 5 or 6 jerk baits laying out on the front deck, and I'll make like 10 or 15 casts with one, and then I'll just snap this thing open, slide another one on, make some more casts. You can go through a bunch of different baits, maybe a couple different sizes, different colors, different brands. That's another thing that we haven't really talked about, but there's different actions with different brands, you know, and sometimes just like the color, sometimes that action can be critical. It's weird, but I've seen it. I you know, like a Lucky Strike, the RC Sticks is a Mega Bass knockoff. You know, it's a $7.99 jerkbait versus a $24.99 jerkbait. Similar action, not the same action. I've seen it when the Mega Bass, they want that little shimmy. It's got that tungsten ball in it or whatever it is. When you hit it and it settles, it has a little shimmy, where the RC Stick really doesn't have that. It's got different action. Like the Rogue is, the colder the water, I think the better a Rogue gets. The mixed stick is like that. It shines in colder water.
Better.
It's got a more, it doesn't have a really hard darting action. So not to go off on a rabbit hole, but that's another thing, that the action of an individual jerkbait can make a difference. But this snap allows you to change baits. So you can go through the different brands. If you think they want a different action, you can go through colors, and it also gives it the freedom, just like the loop knot you're talking about. It gives it that freedom, and it gives it a little bit of weight to keep that nose down. Sometimes I'll leave the split ring on there. If the jerk bait is not suspending, if I want to suspend and it's still got the split ring and the snap, I can take that split ring off the front, and that'll lighten it up a little bit. You can just kind of play around. That snap is like it's got about the same weight as a split ring. So you just got to keep that in mind when you're using that snap. It's going to make, if your jerkbait is suspending perfectly when it's just tied straight to the split ring, if you put the snap on there, it may cause it to sink just slightly. It's not going to like sink like a rock. But I think the cool thing about having a snap is that you can just take your baits off and try different colors. And these things, man, I've caught 48 to 50 inch muskie on a snap. I've caught 20 plus pound stripers. I've caught big old flathead catfish on a snap.
Yeah, they won't give out.
They don't pull out. If you get a decent quality one, Spro probably makes the best ones. They make some that are rated for like 80 something pounds. That's the size that I typically use. But you're not going to pull them out. I was always kind of worried about that at first, but I've caught enough big fish that you don't have to worry about that.
And every day it's just like everything else. Every day they want something different. Last winter I was fishing a grass line with the jerk bait. And, you know, sometimes they float up more than you want, or they sink more than you want. Well, I had one that was floating up really fast. I don't know. It was just, it doesn't look right in the water. And I caught a fish on it. I didn't think anything about it. I still didn't like the way it looked. So I put that rod down and I picked up another jerk bait. Oh, it looked good in the water. Just hovered, just suspended perfect. I wasn't catching nothing. I was like, well, I caught one on the other one. I picked it up and threw it, and like 3 casts in, I catch about a 3-pounder on this thing. And it's floating up like, it's not acting like a jerkbait. It's supposed to, quote unquote. Now I had just gotten forward-facing sonar on my boat. So I started paying attention. This was a really good lesson. So I caught that 3-pounder, threw it back, threw out there. Might have been the next cast. And on that forward-facing sonar, you can see the edge of the weeds really good. So I'm snapping that jerkbait down. It's floating up. And this fish comes out the bottom of the lake like a torpedo and just smokes that jerkbait as it's floating up really quick. It thought it was getting away. It's like, oh, that was cool. So I caught a couple more fish like that. And I was like, all right, I'm going to pick up that other. And I wasn't seeing any of these fish until they would show themselves coming up for the bait. So I was like, all right. So I picked up the other jerkbait and I threw it. The one that was acting like I thought the jerkbait was supposed to, nothing. Picked up the other one that was floating, that wasn't supposed to be the right way you're supposed to do it. And it was just like, they were both the same bait. One was floating up, one was doing what I thought it was supposed to do. It was night and day. Night and day. And it was that day they wanted that bait floating up away from them. It's pretty cool to see. The forward-facing sonar was, just as a side note, was kind of cool to see that.
Yeah, that is, man. That's amazing. A lot of times they want it sinking just
it's
slightly.
There's no
sometimes.
It's just, like that stunna they advertise the stunna as a slow sinker, and I've caught a lot of fish on the stunna.
I've watched them come up out of the grass. The same scenario you're talking about, where you can't even see the fish in the grass. Really, you can see a little bit maybe of a brighter return, but you can't tell that it's a fish.
If you knew it was there, you might be able to see it.
But as that jerkbait is slowly sinking, and we're talking like a foot every 6 or 8 seconds or something, it's a really slow sink. As it gets closer, maybe a couple feet from the tops of that grass, you'll see that fish rise up out of the grass and kind of meet it halfway and bite it. I've seen that happen several times. Now, I don't know if it would have been a true suspending bait, if that fish would have came up out of there, but sometimes there's something, it's like a slow motion reaction strike. It's like the slowest of it's so slow you can't even really call it a reaction strike, but it is causing that fish to do something because it's sinking towards them. It's just like a ultra slow motion reaction strike. So, I mean, it's the opposite of what you were saying, where sometimes they want it sinking, sometimes they want it just sitting there motionless, sometimes they want it rising. It's
different every day.
It's every day. Jerkbait fishing is super technical. Sometimes you just go out, the first bait you pick up, you jerk it 3 times, let it sit for 3 seconds, jerk it twice, boom, you get bit. There's days where they're just on it and it doesn't matter. And then there's days where you can really get super, super technical and go through all of the different little tweaks until you finally figure out, it's just like anything else, but it can be more technical than a lot of other techniques, in my opinion. Let's give some stuff away, man. Somebody asked, are Sasquatches more mobile in cold water or cold weather or warm weather? And I really don't know. I know they have a tendency, Sasquatch, they see more Sasquatch in these cold areas, like the mountainous areas, the Northwest, those type of areas. They got the Yeti out in the Himalayas. So
on Sasquatch, is it like, how like on a deer, the hair is hollow so that it helps them swim? Is Sasquatch hair hollow so that they can swim?
I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is.
Might be.
It keeps them warmer too. I think that hollow hair, something about hollow hair keeps them warm. It insulates. That's
we've got the big muddy monster over here in Southern Illinois.
I know, man.
That's our pet Sasquatch.
He has his own beer, that muddy. There's a vanilla porter that's named after him, I think, from over there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I can remember being at Grandpa's and Grandma's, and I can actually literally remember reading a story about the big muddy monster that reportedly there were trees knocked down and they were attributing it to the big muddy monster down in the bottom somewhere.
Yeah.
It made the Southern Illinois. Probably Les Winkler was writing about it. Good old Les, our old outdoor writer, who once wrote a fishing report for Devil's Kitchen. And if you know anything about Devil's Kitchen, they never cut the trees down when they made the lake. They just flooded it. So it's nothing but standing timber. And his fishing report in the newspaper was, the bass were relating to wood.
Jeez, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Les.
They were probably on docks at Lake of the Ozarks that same day.
Yeah, they were on docks at Lake of the Ozarks. That's right.
He's giving up the juice, man. He was giving up the juice.
He was. he didn't want to narrow it down too much.
It's funny. Yeah. They were in the water and
they were in the water.
We caught them in the mouth.
Yeah. So now I'm looking forward to going fishing. I went duck hunting a couple times. I duck hunted the day that weather came through, and we didn't see anything or next to nothing until that weather got close, and then all hell broke loose. And I hadn't duck hunted in 3 years, and Dad and I and my brother went once the week prior, and boy, my shooting was terrible, but we ended up getting a few. And then it was fantastic the day that weather came through.
Keep guessing, guys. I don't see how Jonathan does this. I'm looking at all these numbers. It's like I'm about to go blind. I'm scrolling through all these numbers.
I would get cross-eyed looking at all those.
Nobody's guessing.
I would pick a number between 1 and 50 if it was me.
Between 1 and 10.
Yeah. So the duck hunting was fantastic Thursday, and then Christmas and everything. So I haven't been on the water in about a week. Coming up this Wednesday will be 8 days. That's a long time for me not fishing.
That's a long time for you.
Yeah. It might be about as long a stretch as I've had all year.
Yeah, I feel sorry for you. I might send you some roses or something tomorrow.
No, I'll be all right. I'll be all right. That one thing we were talking about while you're looking, another bait or plastic. I'm on a jig. I'm obviously a proponent of the pork in the winter, but that old plain speed craw. That's awful dang good bait.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good bait year round, but it's good bait in the winter too, that speed craw. Whether on a shaky head or trailer on a jig or just rigged up, just Texas style or whatever. That old speed craw that one has stood the test of time.
It's good because it doesn't have an overpowering action.
I agree. I agree.
It's that just
doesn't do too much.
No, but it does. Even in warm water, it does enough to get their attention.
Yeah, and
you can kind of trim those flippers a little bit to give it a little more action if you needed to. I can't believe nobody's guessed this.
The old speed craw is early up on Mille Lacs. That was put that on a football head and rig it kind of. I just called it Texas style, but I rig it like like you would a shaky head, but on a big like 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce football head. All-terrain tackle makes a really good just bare football head that we would put that on. We called it a rock crawler, and you just throw it out there, and you literally you don't stop it. Once it hits bottom, you just continue reeling it. Mm-hmm. That old salt craw, or not salt craw, the speed craw, doing its thing, and that's a smallmouth killer in the cold water up on Mille Lacs. It actually works down here a little bit too, not to the same extent, but that old speed craw is a good bait. Green pumpkin with little chartreuse on the tips is all you really need.
Nobody has guessed this. Okay, there's been people, one above it, one below it. We're gonna change this up.
New number?
No, we're gonna do this. What kind of boat does Ron have?
Oh shit.
First one that guesses it wins the package.
There's 2 answers to that.
Yeah, there's 2 answers. So we'll just do the glass boat. I think we don't want to do this for another 25 minutes. Because your tin boat, it might take a while for people to guess that.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't get that one right away. Maybe it's not as mainstream.
Right. I'm trying to get down to the bottom of these numbers.
Well, this has been the perfect live stream. 1 glass of bourbon. Worked out perfect.
Excellent. Yeah, we covered a lot of ground. There's a lot of good stuff on there.
Yeah.
I still had 3 or 4 baits but we'll do that.
talking about winter fishing, days are getting longer now. We're past the 21st, and I was, you always look forward to, when it's winter fishing, you're looking forward to spring. When it's spring, you're looking forward to throwing a plastic worm in a brush pile, and then you're always looking forward to the next season, which is kind of the fun of it. And we only got like 9.5 weeks till March. Think about that.
Wow.
Yeah, 9.5 weeks till March. We're basically into January, and by March, I don't care how cold it is, those fish are starting to move, just because of the calendar and longer days.
I noticed that today. Today, I think it had a little bit of it had to do with the snow, the glare off of the snow. But at 5 o'clock, it was still kind of light, somewhat.
What do we gain? 2 minutes a day? Is that what it is?
I think it's a minute or two, depending on the day. But there's a period where the sun comes up just a minute later too.
Okay.
Or the time the sunrise is pushed forward like a minute or something. I was looking at that today. But I noticed it today. I noticed it seemed like it was light just a little bit longer today, even with it being overcast.
Yeah. So we're getting days are getting longer. It's going to be a while.
Snowed here for a little while.
Yeah, it did this evening here again. We got dusted again this evening. I shoveled earlier today, and then
I'm still trying to get to the bottom of these numbers.
No,
unbelievable. I know somebody's guessed it. I just got to get to the bottom of these numbers. I can only do it in spurts because my eyes start getting crazy. I need Jonathan here. Oh, wait, here we go. Okay. All right, I'm starting to see. Oh. It's the first one I see.
Hey.
Andy Leonard. Congratulations. Weiss was right behind it.
What's up, Gabe?
He's got a really cool first name.
Well, other than his first name, he's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Andy. Congratulations. Rich got it too. A bunch of people got it. I should have guessed the aluminum boat. We could have been here all night.
Oh, he would have been here another 30 minutes.
Yeah.
South Fork, by the way.
South Fork. Yeah, you're close.
South Fork.
North Fork. North Fork's a great trout river. Used to go down there below bull shows all the time. And,
really?
We need to do this. We'll do this stream again in like a month and go through some other baits because there's still.
Oh, there's a lot.
Still some other stuff out there.
I was trying to think of some stuff that was off the wall. It's not really off the wall, but it's just kind of forgotten about. But for those fish that are still in the weeds, we used to throw a soft plastic jerkbait all the time in the winter. That is a good winter bait that gets very little traction anymore. Old man shadow, we used to throw all the time. They don't hit the man shadow the way they used to, but just soft plastic jerkbait in general, fluke or whatever, that's a good winter bait.
I know some guys over there on Cedar a couple years ago in one of those winter tournaments were catching them on the soft plastic jerkbait. Yep.
I believe it.
Yeah. So anybody out there, any last minute questions about any of the topics we covered? I don't know if I saw somebody mention something about the spoon and doing the double split ring on the hooks. We talk about that pretty good detail in that spoon video. So any spoon fishing related stuff, flutter spoon stuff, go check out that video that Ron and I did, because we covered quite a bit. I think it's pretty thorough, and it's a great bait for sure this time of the year.
Yeah, the double split ring will definitely keep a few from jumping off that. And once you hook a fish on that spoon, you got to just kind of keep them coming to the boat too. You can't mess around with them. You got to keep them. Don't give them any. You don't want them flopping that big old spoon off the side of their face. That's something that they can throw off there if they're given the chance. So you'll see on his videos, a lot of those fish that I catch on a spoon, you'll see me just reeling them across the surface because I just keep them coming.
Yeah, that's important. Somebody had left a comment on that spoon video about tying the braid, like taking off your split rings and tying the braid, using the braid for a split ring. That's something I've seen.
Yeah.
I think Spider's done that before.
Yeah,
I've never done
Matt
that.
Stefan did a video on that.
Okay.
It accomplishes the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel more confident having a double split ring on there than I would braid. I feel like it'd slip or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, all right, folks, man, it's been a great stream. A lot of people hung out here. We had pretty good numbers consistently the whole night. Covered a lot of good techniques. We'll like we were saying, we'll jump back on here in maybe a month and go over a handful of
winter baits.
Yeah, a few more winter baits because there's a lot of them out there. Go check out Baitworks. If you're new to Baitworks, you haven't been on the website, use the code THM10 and get 10% off of your order. Baitworks is out of Springfield, Missouri. They're really growing. They're really getting new inventory in daily and expanding. So the future's looking good for them. Next week, Joey, Connor, and Jason from Crocagator will be on. So we'll probably have a giveaway. Usually Joey brings a good giveaway, good Crocagator giveaway. I'm not guaranteeing that, but I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't send out some pretty good stuff. She typically does. So she's going to come on here and talk about some new products that they got down the pipe, some of the new stuff that they came out early this fall, the development. Cool. It's going to be kind of cool. Jason does a lot of the molds and stuff. He's got a company that does that stuff. So he's been working with them and they've got some new stuff coming down the pipe. So we're going to get into the production, a little bit of the production side of soft plastics and the molds and that kind of stuff, as well as some of the other things that they've got in store for 2023. And then the week after that, Mike McClellan's going to be on here. We talked about that earlier. So we're going to have an in-depth jerkbait, cold water cranking type stream. So
we might have to, when we do our next winter thing, might have to address cold, muddy water. We got a bunch of rain coming, it looks like, next week.
That's a whole nother topic right there.
That's a whole nother genre of stuff, but it also has some big fish opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. You're exactly right. That's a good, because that's something that when it happens, it sticks around for a month or two at least. Once that water gets cold, once that water gets muddy and it's really cold, the particles just suspend in the water and they just stay there. So you once it gets there, you're gonna have to deal with it for a couple months usually. Yeah. So anyway, that's it. We're gonna wrap it up. Ron, thanks for hanging out with me, man. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, enjoyed the heck out of it, bud. Anytime.
Yeah. So I hope you get out in the water Wednesday. I'm sure you'll send me some pictures.
I'm itching. So.
Okay. All right. Everybody have a good evening and Happy New Year's to everyone. And we'll see you next Monday.